Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of What a Barb, a Polin podcast. I've got my Lecky, I've got my Veg, there's a Beans on the way somewhere, I don't know where she is. We're gonna get started. We've got a lot to discuss, a lot has happened. Whilst we're waiting for our lovely Beans, how are we all doing? Just to note, we are recording this on Saturday. No, it's not Saturday.
Sunday,
it's
babe.
Sunday. On Sunday, the 18th of February. So a few days after Valentine's Day, how are we doing?
That's actually like very appropriate that you did that, because literally on Friday, Veg messaged the chat and she said something about, oh, I'm glad it's Friday or something like that. And I was like, oh, it's Friday? Like, I had no idea.
Like, I have no concept of time, space, mental well-being.
I feel like Robin Williams, the jungle hermit in like Jumanji, when he like stumbles out of the jungle and he's like, what year is it? Like, what day is it? I have no idea.
And I just have to say, for the listener, for the benefit of the listener, what absolute heroes Lecky and Obs have been this week. Like, Beans and I have, you know, we've had a tough week too with all the Valentine's Day stuff, but like, you guys were up until what time?
I didn't go to sleep that night.
Great.
I was up all Valentine's Day.
I went to sleep at just after 5 and I got up at 7 to go to work.
Fucking hell.
Yeah.
This was Obs' first week at a new job and everything.
Second week at a new job.
Second
week in London. And in February, bear in mind, guys, do you remember that time when we were like, oh, from this point onwards, we're going to make fortnightly episodes? How many episodes have we put out in February, given that it's only the 18th?
I don't know.
Yeah. We put out 4 full-length episodes and 1 mini episode, and Lecky and I, let's just say that us and sleep are not currently seeing eye to eye. We haven't happened. I've not had them round for a while. I don't know what sleep is. Yeah. I don't expect to. Lecky, we're dead, basically.
That being said, yes, it's been a very, very exciting, lovely, amazing week.
Yes.
We are so excited. We're still so excited.
We're just tired.
We literally have spent, since Valentine's Day, basically just messaging each other theories and ideas and just freaking out about everything that we got, because our day finally came.
It did.
Yeah. Do you like catch yourself like thinking about like...
Yeah. I'll hop in the shower and then all of a sudden I'm thinking about Portia, and I'll get out of the shower and like message the others about Portia and Penelope's relationship in season 3.
You know, sometimes I'm like, when will my brain be free for like 2 seconds?
Maybe like August?
Yeah, maybe. Yes, but all the time, Veg, since you ask. Where have you been all week? But other than that, we're good, I think.
Yeah, no news.
We haven't had time for news. We haven't had time for a life. Are you joking me?
My God, it feels like we haven't stopped getting news since Valentine's Day.
Yeah. Do you remember when we were in the wilderness weeks and like the breaking news would be like, there's a sticker, which it was a great sticker, to be honest, but
lost in the wilderness.
We're getting there. Hello there, everyone. Editing Ovs here. Just to let you know that we recorded this episode last Sunday, and since then we've had so many more new crumbs, so many more bits of information come through. So at the end of the episode, stick around, because Lecky and I are going to go swooping up at the churro truck and see what other things have popped out from this live stream event. So during the first part of the episode, if we say something and you're like, I'm pretty sure something else has been said about that, well, how have you missed it? Stick around, we will mention it. Also stick around for a special little Breaking Crumbs update with some metadata. Of course, this is what you come to a Pollen podcast for. But in the meantime, go have fun with the past us from Sunday. So this episode, everyone, is going to be a little bit of like sweeping up of everything that's come out. So in our other episode the other day, we went over all the stills and everything like that. We had a chat about the clips. We gave very much just our first impressions of everything. So it's been nice to actually like sit and watch things and see them. Yeah. And so we're going to be digging deeper on a couple of things today. So some of the scenes we're going to be jumping into, some of the timelines, and then things like the Shondaland article we'll be digging more into. So throughout this, we're going to bounce around topics, and it's going to be a bit of a mishmash of all of the press interviews that we've been getting since the event, some of the things that were mentioned during the event, some of the fan theories that have been bouncing around ever since then. Yeah, and just trying to capture it all. And this isn't going to be comprehensive, because I'm sure we'll forget to say something. I'm sure there's more to say, more theories to be had. Yeah. But I just thought, whilst waiting for Beans, just to warm ourselves up, as if we've been cooled down at any point this week. So one question that I've seen a lot this week is, did they play the wrong clip at the live stream? And you know what? I I don't know that they did.
I don't think so either.
So the theory that they did is that there's a clip and it looks like Nicola is maybe saying something like, did they play the wrong clip or something along those lines. It was like a strange reaction to what was shown.
Yeah, kind of gasping.
But to be honest, like they're such a huge production. Everything is like locked in way in advance. You can't start changing things at the last moment. And I think that clip was like loaded to go. I think it's just the phrasing given to us was like, they said, oh, it's the first 2 minutes of season 3. So I think everyone thought, oh, it's literally the first 2 minutes chronologically.
Yeah.
And then what ended up being showing was an excerpt from at some part in the episode, which we will get to soon.
Yeah.
Beans has just joined us. Hello, Beans. How are you doing, my love?
I am going to be finishing my bagels while we're recording.
Beans, I'm sure you saw that Valentine's clip that was circulating across different Netflixes where the cast were wishing viewers and fans a happy Valentine's Day. It's very lovely to see. But what interesting thing happened in the Valentine's clip?
Claudia, Jesse, and Jess Madsen were doing some promo together.
So we have tried to hunt it down, like, because it was posted on, I think it's called Netflix Nordic, but it was in Norwegian. And I spoke to someone from Norway, one of our listeners in Norway, and she could see it on just the generic Netflix page, but it's got the whole gang.
It seems that a lot of that was filmed the other day. Do you know when they're doing the promo that we got really excited about?
Yeah.
We did a little episode about it, What a Plate of Cupcakes. But we had wondered about the configuration of the cast. And as we suspected, Claudia, Jesse and Jess Madsen doing press together. Beans, what are your in-the-moment reactions?
How interesting.
Because they're definitely grouping people together. I mean, in the Valentine's you had Adjua with Ruth and Daniel, and they're definitely grouping by storylines and things like that. So there we go. And then, Lecky, the other day in our Crumbs, you told us about the good old chair theory, didn't you?
Yes.
How we rise, how we fall. We should say farewell to yet another rumour. What happened?
So Nicola clarified that it was not quite a chair. She said, I've seen people think it's a chair, but we did break a piece of furniture, like fully snapped it, both of us. It was a group effort.
Teamwork.
But it was not a chair.
So the jury's still out.
Yeah. So, is it a sofa? Is it a bed? Did they break the mirror and now have 7 years of bad luck?
No, because that would be smash. That would be smash. It's snap. What can snap?
Maybe they were leaning against like a prop door or something, and it like cracked. Because those aren't usually very sturdy, you know.
I'm still going for a desk.
Or a bookshelf, like one of the bookshelves that are on set. Those are probably fairly flimsy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Little season 1 moment.
Yeah.
But Luke added to that it was a really funny moment where they giggled and it felt really Colin Pen. How sweet. In very exciting news, an interview with Elle magazine was circulating. I think it's hilarious, to be honest. So it was an interview that Veg is going to return to later about Nick and Newt's favourite costuming choices in the season, and they both picked something from either episode 1 or episode 2, and Newt's picked, he said, mine's my arrival coat. So, you know, the famous Rangers house leaks, the famous Dunsil coat. He said they call it Pirate Colin.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you to whoever introduced him to that term.
Whoever, it was definitely at least 20% you, like.
It probably wasn't me, but I have used it a lot.
You've made a very concerted effort over the years.
I think it's just a fandom-wide, like, they've embraced the term Pirate Colin.
Well done to the fandom, everyone.
Give yourself a pat on the back.
Of all the things to know, we have done it. We've done it. Pirate Colin is official. He is canon, literally. And also we had confirmation that this was the costume that Nicola, we mentioned this so long ago in our pre-production Crumbs, that this was the outfit that Nicola was like, whoa, when she saw it.
Aww.
All hail Pirate Colin. Kat Quinn obviously interviewed Nicola over at Tudum in Brazil last June, but Luke sadly wasn't there because he was doing his play in London. So Kat decided to, you know, close the circle and ask the same questions that she asked Nicola all the way back in June. So she prompted Luke with 3 words. She said mirror, carriage, and eclair to get his reaction. To mirror, Luke blushed, laughed, and said, exposed. To carriage, he said, intimate. And then to my personal arch enemy,
Same.
The humble eclair.
He said, question mark. And Nick had to explain it was from the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said, huh? Which suggests it's not in the season. Now, I'm sorry, fans, because I know a lot of you love this scene.
Yeah, it's a fan favourite.
But I have such a strong aversion to eclairs. I'm thrilled. I'm delighted.
Yeah, something about that scene.
I would have been fine if it was in, but I'm also fine having it not be there.
Anything having to do with like food love?
Yeah,
Food love.
Yeah.
it's a bit icky.
Not like loving food. I love food. I'm making bagels as we're recording this podcast.
And you have a cat named after a food.
Yeah. I'm just saying, you know, I'm not trying to get lewd in the nude with food. If you watch Flight of the Conchords, you know what I'm talking about.
You never got whipped cream involved.
Oh, the stickiness of it.
All right.
I have like an aversion to dairy, and I don't mean like an intolerance. I mean, I hate it.
Oh, the sticky sweet smell of dairy.
Where is this conversation going?
Rest in peace, Eclair.
On the count of 3, I want everyone to hiss for me. 1, 2, 3. Five Life, Five Truthers, we have an update for you. Kat Quinn recorded part of the Q&A that was not aired on the live stream, but she managed to sneakily record a few snippets for us, and she got a couple of questions, but most notably, one of the press in attendance asked about the fan theory that Lord Fife has a thing for Penelope. And Nicola answered this, and she said that it was a funny theory that they really end up liking about Lord Fife, but it's definitely a fan theory. She explained that fans have decided that Fife is her secret lover, and she has no idea where it came from. She said it's completely fan invented. You know what? We've had 2 years to pass. We've had to invent a whole bloody lot of things. And they've put Bert Seymour, who plays him, into loads of fan edits. Have you done that, Lecky?
I did it in one of ours, yes.
You've dabbled.
But it was a joke.
But she said that Fife was meant to hate Penelope. It's just the way it was edited that makes it kind of look otherwise.
Yeah.
We've talked about this. I think we most notably talked about this, if you want to go listen, in what was it called?
What a joke all of my friends will love.
Yeah, in our 204 rewatch, What a Joke All of Our Friends. What a joke all of our...
What a joke Olive, my friends would love.
It's an olive pun. Go and look for the one that has an olive pun on it. It's that one.
What a joke all of my friends will love. We did discuss the bit of the history, the lore to Fife. He was very much a fan theory before the season 3 synopsis came out. And once the season 3 synopsis came out, we all very tragically said goodbye to our story. But he's lived in our hearts and souls.
Yeah.
Well, some people, you know, grasped onto the hope that Lord Fife and Penelope were a thing.
We cling.
But we kind of just love him because he's kind of like I call him a Regency shit stirrer.
Yeah.
We didn't really ship it.
And you know what? I've always said I'd be throwing the cocktails back with him.
Yeah, so Lord Fife and Penelope may not be a thing, but you can still embrace the Fife life. You could still embrace the Regency shit stirrer.
AO3 still exists, you know.
I will say that Bert Seymour, the actor who plays Lord Fife, did not help the situation at all.
He has fully embraced the theory in a very sweet way.
Yeah. He's like definitely reposted like fan art of people saying that like Fife was, you know, courting Penelope and Colin getting jealous. So he's embraced it for sure.
But to reference Nicola's quote, she says Fife was meant to hate Penelope. Something just went off in my brain when she said that.
Ding, ding, ding.
Because if you look at season 1 and season 2 from Fife's interactions with Penelope, it doesn't seem like he hates her. Even in 208 where he's smirking as he watches Pollen dance, it doesn't seem like he hates Penelope. So I wonder if this is maybe kind of a hint about what his role in season 3 will be, that there will be kind of more animosity from Lord Fife toward Penelope.
Or maybe it's something that was explored in the earlier seasons that just didn't quite make the cut.
Oh, perhaps.
Yeah, good point.
I've always had the feeling that like Fife is a bit of like a social barometer for Pen and Colin. And I've always thought, you know how the Queen, she like approves in the very end in the episode 8, and she like nods and she's like, I approve this match. I think the only person whose approval really matters in any of this, I want at the very end of 308, just the tiniest little
nod.
like the tiniest little nod from
Just
Fife.
a little drink.
Yeah, he
Tips his cocktail,
tips his cocktail towards them and then takes a sip.
Yeah.
A couple of other points to note is this was picked up by a few people, including Kat Quinn, that a string cover of Yellow by Coldplay was played at the cocktail party that occurred after the Q&A, and we believe it was a live performance.
Yeah.
So, you know, they know it's on the radar. We just have to pray that Chris Martin lets them have it in the season. Everyone go make an offering to Chris Martin, please.
Yeah.
And the other thing to note before we really jump into the meat of the discussion,
Or vegetarian alternative.
because this episode is going to be called What a Vegetarian, and it's going to have vegetables all over the cover. Veggie, you're going to fucking love it. I say this as if I'm going to do that. I'm going to make Lecky and Beans do it. We saw a new, not an end logo really, it was like the Netflix logo, wasn't it? That we've not seen before, and it was like a dark green screen, and the N was like made out of stone, and it had flowers growing up the wall because they're wallflowers, and it had a little bee buzzing around. How very sweet. It's officially the season of pollen. Go get your allergy tablets, allergy stands. Guys, are we ready to really jump into it all?
Yes.
Everything. Well, as much as we possibly can. So, to start us off, we have a few general musings about the season. So this is coming from the cast and creatives, just talking about the tone of the season, what we can expect overall in terms of like wider stories. And Jess Brown now really kicked this discussion off by saying that Colin and Penelope are underdogs in many ways. You've had Penelope, who's the perennial wallflower, and Colin's a third son who hasn't quite found himself. That's an important thing to note, I think, that he still hasn't found himself. So we're starting off, he comes back cocky, but he's still not quite there. And Jess continued, you get to see them step into their power this year, which will make a lot of people who's ever had unrequited crush or felt like an underdog before feel very seen.
Great.
And this was a recurring idea that people are going to find within this season a way to feel seen and illuminated.
But you know what the reality is? You never get together with that unrequited love.
Beans.
Okay?
Beans.
I never, ever got together with Tuba Boy.
It's a Regency fantasy. Heavy word on fantasy here. I mean, don't we fucking know that? And then Jess continued that every season, because they do focus on a different couple, it always has a slightly different tone. So with regards to the friends and lovers, she said this offered more familiarity, a bit more coziness. It allows us to lean into the classic rom-com trope, she said. And she also said that she was going to turn those tropes on their head, which we've heard a little bit before. She also alluded to a lot of awkward banter, which we can look forward to.
Woohoo.
And Shonda continued that we get to see a lot of the characters in new situations for themselves and in situations that they never would have been possible for them last season. And I think this is definitely something that when we were in the live stream really took us by surprise for people like Will, Eloise, Benedict, and we're going to come on to them very soon. But the cast and creatives also had an opportunity to describe the season in one word, and we had intimate,
Confidence.
Long awaited.
Romantic.
unpredictable,
Warm.
Zoom in.
Foir, or whatever it was Claudia said.
revelatory, and
Mischievous.
you know what? How many times have I said this to you personally? I said 2024 personally is a mischievous year.
Yeah, you did say
You
that.
did, you told me.
I felt it all year. But Jess said that it was overall about the themes of embracing who you really are, standing up for who you are, who you love, and what you love.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am now filling my bowl with water.
And she also tipped her hat off to all of the production teams, saying that everyone was constantly raising the bar on visuals and that the show was even brighter and more spectacular than ever before. So that's what we've got to look forward to, which is something we've been really excited about because we know how much hard work was put into the season. But shall we move on to, Pollen podcast? Should we move on to Pollen themselves, Pen and Colin?
Yeah.
In terms of where we're going to find Pen and Colin at the beginning of this season and sort of the state of mind and the journey we can expect them to go on, Jess said that Colin, for his part, has spent last season trying to find himself and get over his past heartbreaks. He enters this season having succeeded at that.
Thank God.
He enters with a real new sense of confidence, and that's a good thing. I think that's a crucial phrase, a real new sense of confidence. And then she reflects on Penelope and said, because Penelope has lost her two best friends in the world, she's trying to make the best of a bad situation and she's going to need some help from Colin. So they had a bit of a joke about whether we can forgive Colin for what he did in 208. And obviously we're going to, because what a short story it would be. And also, they're friends ultimately. But Luke said it's a really good place to start. If everything was good between the two of them, there's less opportunity for growth. And Nicola continued that season 2 reflectively feels like a very different show to what we're going to have going forwards. She said it's interesting because they get these glow-ups aesthetically, but they're still these big nerds under it all.
Love that.
They try to be cool, but you're like, you're not cool at all. And I think that's something we really love, we love to see.
Yeah.
I do think you can be cool and a nerd, though.
Yeah, for sure.
You can be a hot nerd. But I think that's something that, especially with terms of Colin, I think, and this will come up again later, is there's been allusions to his character being very different. You want him to have the growth, but still ultimately stay true to the character that we know and love, and to see him on a very authentic journey of growth. And to hear that at his core, they both still share those foundational aspects of the relationship was so lovely. And Luke added on to this as well that both characters have felt like outsiders. They've never felt like the romantic leads. There was also allusions that they've never really felt settled within their place within their families. And he said, so to give them that opportunity and for us to really dive into that, it felt like a gift to have that. But as I was just saying about Colin's character, and the evolution and the differences and changes he's going to have over the season. When Luke was talking about how he resonates with his character, he says that he thinks there's more similarities between himself and the Colin that we found in season 1 in season 2, and that he doesn't quite share as much in common with season 3 Colin. Certainly not the beginning, which I thought was very interesting. He says that he wouldn't have this newfound swagger or confidence that Colin has gathered on his travels.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, how far of a departure.
Yeah, because we've speculated that season 3 is a return to kind of the charming Colin we saw in season 1.
We saw for 20 minutes, though.
Yeah,
we saw that Colin for 20 minutes, so we don't really learn him.
But if Luke is hinting that Colin's confidence takes the story in a completely new direction and is kind of a new character, it's interesting. I eagerly await the trailer to see what that looks like.
Oh, yeah. But he did add a comment which I think is very pertinent. He says, I feel like throughout his journey, Colin is just kind of making his way back to who he actually is.
Yes, I love this.
I suppose the question is, what is that returning to? Is that returning to the Colin we barely knew in season 1?
I think so.
Before he met Marina.
It makes sense to me.
And so that's the core of the character, the original aspect of him, but we never really got to spend time with him. So for us, it's a very fresh take on the character. Or do you think, and we'll get to this in just a moment, do you think that we're going to have this aspect to his character that's going to feel a bit more unfamiliar, the swaggeriness, the cockiness that we saw in the clip from 301, and that along his journey, something is going to break or fracture or change him to kind of loop him back round to the Colin that is more familiar to us.
Find his true self.
To his true self. And that is the question that's always been like, who is his true self? And Luke touched on this. He says that there's a sensitivity, the warmth and kindness and the sense of humour. They're all very core characteristics of Colin's character that I think remains very true. And this was something that Nicola touched on as well. She said that the most interesting part of the season as a whole was the dynamic shift that we're going to have taking place. And that Pen in the season at the beginning is looking up to him as the guy who's going to help her find a husband. And then Penelope becomes more confident. But as Penelope starts to find her confidence, he starts to lose his confidence.
Yeah.
I think the power shift is enormous, she said. Now this was, I think of everything we've got, I think this is one of the most interesting tidbits for me. What are we thinking?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Because it almost seems like she is going to gain confidence as she starts to have some success on the marriage mart, and maybe even like see her effect on...
Sorry, she's just making bagels.
She's just making bagels. This is amazing. It's like watching a YouTube like cooking video. Okay, sorry. Anyway, so she's going to gain confidence in herself, and I feel like at some point she might also sense that... Well, I think after episode 2, she'll definitely sense that Colin isn't immune to her either. But I feel like he will lose confidence because Penelope is not going to choose him. There's going to be a point where she actively starts to pursue Debling in spite of knowing that he has feelings for her. So he feels like he can't measure up.
And in spite of knowing her feelings for him.
And we've talked about before that Colin may be insecure because Lord Debling offers more than he can. So I feel like that will impact his confidence also.
So what we're going to start with, and we really see in that opening clip where her confidence has plummeted through the floor from failing spectacularly, publicly humiliated, and his is much higher. He's a cocky little shit. He's full of himself. So through the season, we're going to see the inverse. So she's going to go higher, he's going to go lower. Do you think their ultimate journey is that they're going to come on a plateau together at the same level of confidence that they find within one another?
I think so, yeah. They'll end well matched.
Because I think this is the issue, and it's something that I think we need to just note in these discussions that we're having recently. Our discussions at the moment are very heavily about Colin making it up to Penelope and Penelope's confidence rising and these kind of things. We know that there's a whole other arc that needs to come in the second half of the season in terms of how Colin's going to deal with her secret, whether there's trust that needs to be regained on her part and everything. But just in the nature of the way that promotion works, they're withholding a lot of the part 2 aspects of it, which is why our discussion is very part 1 heavy.
Nicola has talked about how Penelope needs and now has taken Colin off that pedestal. At the same time, Penelope also kind of needs her reckoning with her power as Lady Whistledown and how she's used it and how she continues to use it, merging both Lady Whistledown and herself and refining her voice.
Yeah.
And she's kind of got an inflated sense of ego in season 2. So I feel like we might see that in season 3.
Yeah, 100%.
And so she needs to mellow out a little bit herself.
And so the way their confidence is on this sort of pendulum swing between the two of them, do you think this pedestal aspect is, because we hear it time and time again from Nicola as such an important point that he's fallen off the pedestal, that she's had him on for years. Do you think as he realises his feelings for her in the first half of the season, that he is going to go the other way and start putting her in? Because that's what you do when you realise you're in love with someone. Everything they do is perfect.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you think that he's going to put her on the pedestal and then she gets knocked off? And that's the journey that we have.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, love it.
I just want to address that we know that that's all to come. We're not like the whole season has to be Colin winning her back. It's just the way they're marketing it is very heavy on the lessons and the confidence and everything like that. And it's an interesting journey because Luke pointed out that it's not going to be as easy as people think it's going to be. He thinks that people think that, you know, it's a case of he just needs to open his eyes, come to his senses, be like, oh, she's there all along. I love her, happily married forever after. But that's not what's going to happen. It's a lot more complicated. And Nicola says, which is what we've just said, they can't quite get on the same level.
Yeah.
And it's that sort of situation where we can assume that maybe just as he's really realising how he feels, she's gone the other way and pursuing someone else. It's that kind of consequence. The closer he gets, the more she's trying to pull herself away out of fear, out of disbelief and things like that.
So let's talk about baby Pollen.
Aleki, I squealed. I think you squealed when this happened.
Yeah.
A little interview clip came out of another Nick and Newt's interview. And Nicola said they've known each other since they were kids. So I think it's lovely to see maybe how the relationship was at the very beginning when they were little. And had no self-conscious. She said of Colin that he has a line in the season which reflects this. Lecky, what did you make of that?
As soon as I heard her say when they were little, I was so happy because I feel like this just means we're getting baby Pollen. I could not be more excited. But also that line about how this is going to get me emotional, I'm sorry, but how maybe Colin touches on how they weren't self-conscious as children in their early stages of their friendship when they first met each other. They were just completely, you know, sharing all of themselves with each other.
Yeah.
And now they're coming back to that as they fall in love. Oh, God.
Yeah.
That's so cute.
Yeah.
I know.
She loves friends to love it.
Yeah.
Invisible string.
I think it's also, a little invisible string. It's also that I wonder if for Colin, when he's reflecting on the journey that they've gone on, that's something that he's not beating himself up over, but when he really looks back and analyses why he didn't see this very obvious thing in his life, it is because they were so young. And we don't know how young they were. I'm hoping it reflects the 12-year gap, right? I hope it was 7 and 9 and that's the 12 years that we then met them in season 1. And I wonder if he does have a moment where he's like, I didn't see it because we were so little. And when you're a kid, you're just fully yourself and don't really like interrogate. And it's that journey that they've gone on together, which is why it's never been obvious to him. And it is a different turn from the books because they were at a different age in the books. Whereas if they've had this long-standing friendship, I think it is harder for you to see those transitions that happen over a long period of time for someone.
Yeah.
So I think whatever line that is going to kill me. So yeah, do you think we're going to get baby Polin flashbacks? Maybe multiple, maybe at different points in their relationship.
Oh my God. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, Lecky, you think if we do, it'll be early on in the season. I know some people have speculated that it might come up as sort of the opening of Old Friends.
Yeah.
The title of Old Friends is very interesting.
The title of Old Friends is compelling, but I would just say I would find it more interesting to see their first meeting and their early relationship earlier in the season.
Yeah.
So that we can finally kind of get Colin's mindset and understand why he hasn't seen Penelope in a romantic light and see kind of how their early friendship formed. I feel like it's important. I feel like it would make more sense to introduce that earlier. I mean, I won't complain. Maybe like Ob said, we'll get multiple baby Pollens.
Yeah, Anthony's flashback was... The big one was in episode 3, I think.
Episode 3.
Yeah.
It reminds me of something that Beans has said a very long time ago. And it ties into the fact that these are 2 characters we've already met. And that's a key difference with the season, that we already know them very well. Okay, we know them now, but we need to ask the question why.
Yes.
Like, why are they the way this? Why do they have this relationship that they do? And Beans, when we were talking ages ago about his saviour complex and this, the nature of his relationship with Penelope and how, you know, we've seen it in season 1, we've seen it in season 2. You posited the idea that I really love, that maybe in that initial meeting, something happened that really set that dynamic up.
Yeah.
And to go back to the origins of that, it wouldn't just be like, oh, it's cute to see them young. I think it's a key piece of the puzzle that we actually need to see so that as an audience, we can understand the mindset that he's been in his whole life.
I think I said it was something like maybe she fell off the horse. Well, maybe not that dramatic. Or like she was scared of the horse that they were riding or something. And then he like calmed her down.
He came to her rescue.
Yeah.
So I remember really liking Beans' suggestion about this, especially because I feel like at the end of episode episode 1, we're going to presumably have Colin offer to help Penelope find a husband. That's his hero moment, making amends for the mistakes he's made in the past. So I feel like it would be a good opportunity around then to show us that flashback where we see that first evidence of his hero complex towards Penelope, to explain that part of the relationship and also that part of himself.
And to also answer the question that the audience have had is, why can't he see that she looks at him like that? And I think if we establish that this little Penelope has always had this reverence with him, I think it answers it, because that's all he's ever really known around her.
Yeah, but I wouldn't complain about more baby Pollen. As a quick aside, I also think that the term old friends also works on a different level. It could be a possible reference to the way that Pollen's dynamic changes, with them becoming former friends and current lovers after the carriage scene takes their relationship to a new level.
Just before we move on, speaking of Penelope giving certain looks to him, just a couple of interesting other tidbits that popped up, didn't they, Veg? What have you got for us in the wardrobe?
They did indeed. So we had some lovely little costuming tidbits from one of Kat Quinn's interviews. She asked what her favourite Easter egg was in the season 3 wardrobe.
Not actual Easter eggs.
So I tried to hide little Easter eggs of not actual Easter eggs, but
yeah. Not Easter eggs, but it was asked what their favourite Easter egg. And so Luke talked about his wardrobe and how instead of having waistcoats for specific days, there was sort of a big selection of a wardrobe he could pick on the day, almost like getting dressed in the morning as a real character. So that helped the styling through the season. And he would pick things that would match Pen's energy. They mentioned the butterflies that are on a few of his waistcoats. But yeah, it was just sort of the idea of him having a selection of things to sort of choose from rather than being a set thing, which seemed really just a really unique way to do it, and kind of helps with Colin's journey as it goes through the season, because he can sort of work out what his character would do, which I really liked.
Yeah, really interesting from an acting perspective to give him that opportunity to decide what Colin would even wear day to day. Is kind of neat.
Yeah, I think it also might help with his acting choices as well, since so much that we've heard of Colin is him coming into his own. And so by Luke Newton being able to choose his outfits, it gives him this freedom that I think he can then help tune in with his character a little bit better. He gets the freedom of figuring out his own swagger within this character, so to speak, and then in return Colin's swagger as well. So that's fun.
I love that it's connected to Penelope's energy as well. And the thing with Colin is he's always a character whose wardrobe choices have been tied to other characters. He's been defined not by his own personality in his outfit. They've been defined by you're viewed as a child, so your outfits match Gregory's. You're viewed as a child, so you have this baby blue colour palette. What I thought was interesting, which was something we've been wondering about, is this idea that if he has a wardrobe where it's a bit of a mix and match choices, does this finally explain Enchanted Pollen? Because we noticed that Enchanted Colin was basically the same as Osterly Pollen. Could it just be that he does rewear that at a later point, and so maybe he does actually match Enchanted Pen after all?
Maybe. I guess it's because it's like a ball outfit. It seems less likely to be a repeat than sort of a day-to-day outfit, but not out of the question at all.
But what of Penelope? What of her?
Well, we also had a nice little tidbit about Pen. So Nick described the scene where Penelope decides to have a glow up and change her entire wardrobe. So she said that she opens her wardrobe and the dress you see on the top of the pile she wore to the first ever ball, the Danbury ball. And so Nick asked them to put it at the top and have that as a little nod for the fans of that's where it all began, and that's sort of a jumping off point for her new style, and it's very exciting.
And we have seen multiple times in episode 1 many of her season 1 looks are coming back, so old favourites, fear not, they're coming home.
Very quickly, I love this little tidbit too, because I feel like it justifies us being so overly
justifies my job role on the podcast.
So overly observant because
your contract has been renewed.
So overly observant because, and detailed with our own theories and stuff like that, because it shows that not only the costume designers, set designers, and actors all put in a little bit of something that means that has a deeper meaning. So I feel for all of us, we're a little bit justified with our, maybe overanalyzing.
A huge amount of the storytelling is being conveyed through the costuming, and that's something that they're definitely leaning into in this season. So let's jump into the scene from 301, let's start chronologically, the Goodnight Mr. Bridgerton scene. So we discussed this a little bit in our last episode, and I'm sure that over the next few weeks we'll keep coming back to the scene, keep breaking it down.
And keep breaking down.
Any new thoughts on, and keep breaking down naturally, any new thoughts on this scene? I think when I've watched it a lot of times over, I've been so taken by both of their acting choices and both of the moments that we find the characters in. But I still find Colin's choices so fascinating that, and we will talk about in a second where we think this scene is sitting within the first episode, but what we have here is he knows that something's wrong with him, and his instinct to try and fix that is to try and like flirt his way out of it, which is something he's done accidentally perhaps with Penelope before, but I don't know if we've seen him be this like overt, and it's this cockiness that he thinks he can come and smooth things over by being the smooth talking charmer, where with Penelope this is where he finds friction, and I wonder how much of that friction is going to continue to develop, where she is going to keep catching him out, not deliberately, but there's going to be these moments such as the remarkable eyes scene that catch him and break down this facade that he's got built up. And the way that he smirks with her when she goes, "You miss me," he smirks and he nods to himself like, this will sort it all out. He's like really proud of himself. It's such a different dynamic that we've seen him act with her before.
I think my thing is like he's so like aloof with how he's speaking to her, very like light, and he's not taking anything serious. It's just Pen, you know? And so I feel like him seeing her actually mad at him is anew, and so he's taken aback. He's also probably taken aback by the front that he's being confronted by what he has said, which he may not have experienced before from anybody outside of his family.
His reaction to realising she's upset and to the things she says about overhearing him, I was sort of taken aback by some of his reactions and almost disappointed, like when he suggests move, like he doesn't really say anything. All he says is Pen.
Yeah, he's silenced by it.
And he suggests moving somewhere private, which is objectively also quite bad and upsets her even more. And I think it's almost like he even makes it worse for himself. And when I first watched it, I was like, oh, that's kind of sad. But then I realised like it's such a good jumping off point for like...
Yeah, exactly.
It's such a good start to the season. Just fully like jumping in with that point that's going to turn around their relationship completely. And we were talking about it just being less of a confrontation, maybe something he just read in Lady Whistledown later on. But like, I just think this is such a great way to kickstart the season.
It's the way she kicks through in a line. Like he's like clearly feeling himself. He's like, I've got this, I can fix this. And he smirks and nods. And then she says, "You miss me, but you've never caught me. Is that correct?" And it's that direct thing where, and it completely cuts through to him. And he goes, "Pen," and he doesn't finish his sentence, and he closes his eyes. He looks, he doesn't know what to do with it. And then she just says it. We've wondered how she's going to say it. She just says, "I heard you." And he looks down, he can't meet her in the eye. And then Veg, as you say, when the men walk past, he's very edgy about it. And it's so frustrating because he then chooses the stupidest thing again, where he says, "Should we go somewhere more private?" Which is not only tapping into her fears that he's embarrassed of her, but it's like, you haven't fucking learned a thing here, have you? The last thing you should be doing is going and have a conversation in private.
Which again, I think highlights just how... it just highlights his mentality of, oh, she's just Pen, oh, we've known each other, if we go into private it's not a big deal, but it's different now. It's different.
And this could be a moment where when he's looking back over their journey, he's more aware of the way, because in this moment at least he realizes that he's hurt her in some way, whereas we've seen many points in the past few seasons, moments where he's very accidentally hurt her, but he hasn't had the awareness. Like he left the "You Do Not Count" scene skipping away, being like, just had a chat with my bestie, and she's been devastated. And it's where he still hasn't had the reckoning where he's realizing that his actions have had consequences.
To revisit the letters that I freaked out about last time, in this conversation, Colin, when he's talking about writing to Penelope, he says, "As I always do." And I was thinking, did baby Pollen maybe exchange letters like as children after Colin left for school? Or this is also very Colin, after 1 year of being pen pals, is that always for Colin? But the phrasing "as I always do" was very interesting to me.
Yeah, to be honest, that's more him. Also, I was messaging you about this, Lecky, wasn't I? That he says, "If you're going to make me say it out loud, I miss you. That isn't I missed you whilst I was away traveling.
Present tense.
That's I miss you now. I miss you right now. I miss that, like, because they're together and we can assume they've had an interaction earlier, but he misses their friendship.
I feel like kind of just that kind of goes into my theory where she's been ignoring him. Well, it goes into all of our theory, really. But, like, he like, maybe called on her or expected her to come to the Bridgerton house, but her and Eloise are also not arguing, so I'm wondering if there's going to be a scene in the beginning where he comes home and then he's in the drawing room or something and he goes, I haven't seen Pen in a while, and Eloise just like, it's like, well, you're probably never going to see her again or something. So it's like an active, like, he is missing her because she's not around all the time.
I wonder if it's always that thing of, do you know, when a relationship dynamic has changed and, you know, it can just be going through a bit of a bad patch and it's like, you're there, but you're not there. Like, what we've had is out of reach. In the synopsis, it says the one he's dismayed to find that Penelope, the one person who always saw him as he was, isn't there for him. And it ties into this thing as secretly under all this swagger, under all this big facade, is he secretly just frustrated by how he's being perceived and just wants the person who always saw him wants to be back in her favour, and is that what is missing? And also, just a quick note, it reminds me of 202 at the races, where he never finished the sentence where he was like, Pen, and then we never found out what he was going to say to her. And we've always wondered if he was going to say, I missed you, but now he's finally said it out loud, but he says it in such a cockily dismissive way, you can totally understand why it frustrates her. So just a question, how early in the episode do you think this is taking place? So we know this is 301, Out of the Shadows. Oh, also a note about Out of the Shadows. How dark is this shot? They're in the corner. They're tucked away.
Lit in shadow.
The lighting is very harsh, lit in shadow. But how early do you think this is taking place?
I would say, I would go back and look at like 201. I'm just pulling it up right now. And I would say like midway, because I think it's the first ball. And there's probably like two major events probably in the first episode.
It's comparable to when it sits with the Cantonese conflict, I think. I'd imagine it sits at a similar point. Or in season 1, where Daphne and Simon didn't get off to a good start. It tends to fall like within the first 25, half an hour.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was going to say, that's about 28 minutes into the first episode in season 2. So I would guess about there.
Also, I love the specificity of that. And, you know, you're probably going to be right.
I mean, I think we've gone past specificity at this fucking podcast.
Well, I mean, like, because I feel like this is their Lady Danbury's ball is always first, and I feel like they need an interaction at least midway through the episode so that there's time to build to them coming to an agreement later in the episode, hatching that plan.
Like Luke was saying, this is a starting point. This isn't like, oh my God, the conflict, they're never going to recover from this terrible thing that he did once. It's like the starting point, and then by the end of the episode they'll hopefully already have the plan into place. So if we're saying this is naturally the first ball of the season, what do we think the context of this scene is? It looks like it's the end of the night or towards the end of the night when Penelope is going to head off. She heads off alone, maybe to go publish a whistle down about the evening, but she's clearly very upset. Has she already spoken to Colin that night? Has this been where she's been failing spectacularly?
I think so.
Nicola said that she's incredibly terrible at speaking to people and it's awkward, and Colin sees it and he's like, oh my God, this is disastrous. What do we think the context is that's put Pen in this mindset and Colin in this mindset, respectively?
I think she's been failing spectacularly, as you said. And then, as I mentioned earlier in the episode, I was having some shower thoughts about Portia's role in season 3. And I was thinking, if Prudence marries or is married in episode 1, I was wondering what Portia's goal would be for the season. So I wondered if maybe she like makes a remark to Penelope, kind of in the vein of the book, where she says that, you know, she'll expect Penelope to care for her if she remains a spinster, or maybe and then maybe something like that just kind of furthers Penelope's plan to find a husband this season, because she really doesn't want that to happen. Also, Penelope could maybe persuade Portia to give her one more season to find a match. I don't know, but I kind of like I had the idea of
the bagels are in the oven. I boiled them because that gives them fluffiness, and now they're getting their final bake through.
I kind of like the idea of Portia being surprised first by Pen's success with Debling and Colin. If she knows right off the bat about Pen's plans, though, there could be like a scene at this ball, at the Danbury ball, where maybe Portia witnesses Penelope failing spectacularly and either like shoots her a look or like say something kind of scathing about her choice of dress, because we all know that Portia favors happy colors. I don't think she'll really like this really rich emerald green that Penelope is wearing.
And this is a very deep dark palette.
Yeah, and I feel like maybe that will just kind of fuel Penelope's anger even further before this scene, especially if Colin then compliments her choice of dress and the color.
So it's going to be a brutal scene, I think. What we do know is that her glow up really does happen quite quickly. Beans, I think we'll get onto the costume in a second, but I think you're of the idea that this is still a transition dress, and that very much seems so when you compare it to her later choices. Veg, how is she looking?
So she has got on, as we've said, a green dress, and it is quite a deep green, and I did do a little cross-reference of all the different greens we've seen so far in promo, and it does kind of match some of the colour scheme of what we have on the Twitter, the new almost theming for the season of the green with the gold. Does remind me a bit of that. But I think it is definitely a bold choice and a very different one. Besides sort of the bright colour schemes that she normally has, the greens, the pinks, and often the yellows, this is a really deep colour. And she also has black gloves on. So black gloves, from what I was able to research, pre-Victorian times, black gloves were not widespread like in the women's fashion. Like men would wear them, like the black leather, but in terms of women at balls, it was not common at all. It wasn't fashionable. It was more something you'd wear in mourning. So this almost feels like Pen is sort of kind of jumps straight in when she changes her wardrobe. This is maybe the first ball where she's doing that, and she's jumping straight in with this bold look.
Yeah.
But maybe hasn't quite
nailed it.
Got her a full grasp on it yet.
So that's what she alludes to. She says, no matter if I change my wardrobe, I'm still the laughing stock of the ton. But this dress is, like you said, the use of black is so stark. And Nicola has talked about how she was going to be in a dark headspace to start with. Whereas everything we see from even just episode 2, from the very next episode, she goes towards that much lighter palette. So she's turned away from the citruses of the Featheringtons, but she's leaning into the softer, lighter palettes, more towards Bridgerton blue, but also towards her favoured sage and seafoam and such. So I wonder if this choice is more reflective of her state of mind in this moment where she's in a very low point.
Maybe so,
And then from that point on, it's going to become lighter and brighter as she goes along. And her hair is down here as well, which is very vulnerable, I think. And I wonder if this is, she's even more flayed open because she's put herself out there and it's gone horrifically. Not only has he seen it, he's then making flirty jokes that are even frustrating to her. And it just all creates a storm of resentment and pain for her.
I think I do agree with Veg more that it's that she wants to do the polar opposite of what her mom has. So for her, she's picking out what she thinks looks good, but is completely separate from her mother. Very much my mom used to always put me in pink, and I never disliked the color, but because I didn't want to wear pink all the time, I just instantly went to black for years. And I would told her I would hate pink. It's very much I'm going to do this to defy you, and I would like to wear things that I like. So I definitely think this is still very much a transition into some of her newer outfits, and she's still very much finding her style. Yeah.
The only thing gives me pause on that is the fact that she says she's changed her entire wardrobe, so it sounds as if she's already sort of done the changes she's going to make. But I think it does ultimately make more sense, that this is the first step, and then because we've seen so many things of her in paler colours that this isn't going to be. She's not going to suddenly become a goth, as far as we know. Like
Bean says, maybe this is more reactionary against something rather than becoming her own.
Right.
One thing that Penelope says during this is that, and she seems so certain of it in this moment, is that Colin is embarrassed by her. We've discussed this before, and we've said that he isn't embarrassed by her. Do you still think that's the case? Do you think that this is just Penelope's deepest insecurities bursting out of her at this moment? I think we've seen Colin with her too many times for him to actually be embarrassed by her.
I think he's more embarrassed that he's come in and he's got the swagger and he wants to be seen as
cool.
It's not cool because he doesn't think Pen is uncool, but I think he seems to be taking control of his image, and he's not sure what that means yet.
He does care what other people think of him. That's just the truth of it. Yeah, he does care what people think.
And he knows her reputation. But I also think that, in a way, too, he could tell that she was getting emotional, and so he maybe wanted to bring her to somewhere privately so that, if she yelled at him or lost her cool, she wouldn't further embarrass herself in front of everyone else.
Yeah.
For instance, he took her into the back room at the end of season 2, partially because he didn't want to, like, I know it's ironic because of what he said later, but he didn't want to embarrass her and her family in front of the ton. He wanted to bring it up privately so that it could be figured out. So I think it's a little bit of both. There's some embarrassment on his part, and also, like, he's trying to be considerate of Pen and not have this big emotional thing happen.
Yeah, I wonder if she's stormed out and he's followed her. And that was the lightness he tried to enter with, being like, the colour, maybe Cressida said something horrible about her dress, and he's followed, and it's like, it does look kind of good on you, though. Like, any thoughts on if Colin is embarrassed by Pen?
I don't know if he's embarrassed by her, but I think he is very conscious about how he is perceived in society. So when he does that sideways glance at those men who are walking past who say Bridgerton and kind of acknowledge him, I think he's embarrassed by the confrontation they're having, not so much Penelope.
And do you think that is then leading to a public declaration?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
In front of everyone.
Inject that into my veins.
And in full light as well.
Yeah.
Because this is a conversation that's happening so much in the dark. Literally, he's in the dark, but they're plunged into darkness. And that this is going to be the parallel that we're going to get right at the end, where he's going to publicly declare.
Yeah.
I don't think he's embarrassed by their friendship. I think, like you say, I think he's embarrassed of how he's perceived. And, like, again, this is something that we were chatting earlier about. This scene almost reminds me, in a very strange way, of 204, the Beauty and the Beast scene that we've talked about before. So what you have here is Penelope is deeply upset about something that he has contributed to, but also I think other things have gone on that have upset her as well. And he comes in at this by trying to repair it by being very flirty.
Yes, exactly. She needs a friend.
Yeah, exactly. I wonder how this scene would have played had he come to her as a friend in that moment. Obviously, she's still mad at him, but would that have broken through to her more? And is this a setup we're going to have of, like, let's get back to being friends?
Yeah. He might have been able to crack through that facade if he had been more himself and more honestly concerned about how she was doing.
Because for her, if she's just made an embarrassment of herself trying to attract suitors, and maybe Cressida or someone's made a comment about it, it does come across then as mockery to her. You can understand why she thinks it's, like, almost mocking for him to come out and say something flirty to her. He's doing it as a balm, but it's completely the wrong thing to say. And I think this is really ironic considering that's all she wanted from him last year. Like, she would have lapped up this flirtiness last year. And it, like I say, it reminds me of the Beauty and the Beast scene and the You Do Not Count scene, where she last year was in many ways trying to be the wrong thing to him. He was hurting deeply last year, and I think during that hurt he really needed a friend. Like, after he came back from Marina, he really needed someone to just be his friend there, and Penelope was pushing him too far romantically, and it would, like, bite back at her. And I think this is the same parallel that we're having here, where he is being the wrong thing to her and what she needs is a friend. What do you think he does after this? She walks away. We've always wondered what the confrontation would be like. He doesn't chase after her that we know of. He doesn't say anything back. How do you think this has affected him? What will his next steps be? And how can he go about fixing it?
As much as I hate to say it, I feel like there's going to be another ball where Penelope has an even more kind of embarrassing time trying to find, you know, a suitor who's interested in her. And Colin's going to witness this and kind of be affected by it and realize how much maybe he even contributed to her failure. By the words he made. Yeah. And that might prompt him to, you know, seek her out and make that offer to try to help her find a husband.
Do you think he's still going to be this swaggery energy with her? Or do you think he is going to be a bit more authentic in their friendship? Or do you think it's a journey that we're going to go into?
I think he's going to put on a facade at first. This, like, I can help you out, all this other stuff. And, like...
yeah, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I know what I'm doing. And then when it starts to get into the thick of things, for instance... we're probably going to see some of the cracks when he, like, accidentally cuts his hand, or she, if we're presuming, sees his journal or things like that. I think we're going to slowly start to see that break down, and he's allowing this more vulnerable, open, emotional side of him, which might, going back, be what Luke was talking about, is we haven't gotten Colin being fully open and vulnerable. Like, it's never been his own decision to be that way. It's been something he's been forced into. So maybe this is part of that, and just discovering true confidence within that. So I think he's going to start out being very much like giving Pen a mask that he gives everybody else, and then like slowly just it comes off and he's more vulnerable and open and sweet.
Because she has the ability to see through to his true self.
Right.
And he can feel very seen by her.
Yeah.
Because if you think about the market still that we got at Sodom, you you can see like he's like got a very playful smile, and he's still in his pirate jacket and everything. And I think that's still very much what you've been saying, Beans, about how he's going to retain that swagger.
It's giving My Fair Lady a little bit.
It's a very Pygmalion story. Well, the suitor's plot is very Pygmalion.
Yeah.
And that is definitely playing into it, I think. But I think the difference with like the My Fair Lady is where the tropes are being inverted, because that's such a trope. The Pygmalion trope has been around for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Is that you have something like that where you have the male creating this person, this image that he then falls in love with. But I think the way they're going to play with that notion is that Colin thinks he's in control of like, I'm going to teach you. Whereas I think we're going to see in the moment, she ends up teaching him more, and what he's falling in love with consciously is her being her true self rather than her being a creation or a build-up. And I think maybe that's how they're going to play with that trope. And then when you have the moment with the remarkable shade of blue, it's a moment where the set of that is maybe like he's in control, like use a line on me, I can take it. And it's such a true honest moment where she's seeing him, she's seeing his kindness as such a core part of him, which is a vulnerable thing to be seen as kind, and that these are the moments that are going to start breaking through to him. Okay then, so we know that the plot is that Colin is going to agree to help her find a husband. And as we know, who's the man of the hour? Debling.
Debbers.
Debling.
Are we going to find out his first name? I hope so. I have to say, we've always been on the Penling board, and we've lost, you know what, sometimes you lose the wars. We lost Penling. It's Pebling.
Well, I was never a penling anyway, so I'm perfectly happy to not say that word ever again.
Oh, thanks, Lecky. You can go off, make your own bloody podcast then, can't you?
I'm on the Pollen podcast. I don't have to go anywhere.
No, yeah, we're the ones who have to do the offshoot ops.
That's all right. That's all right. We can leave.
You can change it to What a Bub, the Pebbling podcast.
What coming to a streaming platform near you. So we talked a lot about Debling last episode. We're so excited to see him there. And the setup obviously is, as Nicola said, Colin's like, I'll help you. She's like, fine, I don't love you at all. This will work out great. No problems. And then obviously in walks Debling. They click, they're all good to go. Jess made a lot of references to characters feeling like an underdog, especially in terms of Colin. Do you think this is going to come up with Debling, and that he's going to feel like the underdog in comparison to Debling? Because he's everything he isn't.
Yeah, I hope so. Lordy.
Does this mean that we're going to see Colin hunting? Because I really don't want to see him killing fluffy little animals.
No.
But I mean, if they're setting up Debling as his opposite.
Let's hope not. I think the meat eating is enough. I bet he's like, oh my God, this one time I was in France and I had this amazing coq au vin, and everyone's like, oh my God, coq au vin, how fancy. And then Debling's like, do you know that 50,000 coq au vin orphans are left homeless because of your actions? I know that coq au vin isn't an evil animal, don't worry. But I think it's more like that. I hope that Colin isn't going to kill baby animals on screen. But who knows? Although I have to say, Beans, your joke about them looking at a stag head is very pertinent. I think that's actually what they're looking at, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, and the reflection. You can make out the antlers.
Yeah, we had a couple of people message us about that.
I thought it was a painting of an animal. I didn't say stag head specifically.
You were on theme.
You were on theme.
It is, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But yeah, it looks like they actually are looking at it. We drew a line to the mirror to work out the eye lines.
I bet he's like, they're extraordinary creatures, aren't they? They're so big, and they random fact about a bison or a stag head, and that's great.
I'm really loving this voice.
They're so misunderstood. Much like you, Miss Featherington.
Oh, a high compliment indeed. You know what though? This is basically what the Philly season's going to be like. It's going to be Philip just being like, random fact about this tree, and she's going to have to be into it. Oh, bless. Now, the still itself, we really didn't get to go into too much detail in terms of costuming last time, Veg. What have you got for us? Because she's looking absolutely stunning, isn't she?
Yes, my first notes are, oh my goodness, Pen is beautiful.
Endorsed.
So, we've discussed this before. So her dress it's fully Bridgerton blue. It's the same colour as the undercover Lady Whistledown cape that Nicola described as Bridgerton. And I think we've said Colin will be going fucking crazy at this. Like, she's just wearing Bridgerton blue while she's bonding with a vegetarian hottie. So this is a moment for Veg, and other men are trash. Colin is trash. party members.
Oi. If we make it to the end of this podcast with all 4 of us intact, I'll be surprised.
Ooh, very pretty bagels.
Oh,
Those are pretty bagels.
Much like Penelope in the still, the bagels are also beautiful.
I'll hold one up.
Oh, she's a beauty. She does look like a chignon.
Now they're bagels. Sorry to interrupt.
beautiful bagels, beans. So Pen's hair is like, it's up, but it's not in a way that we've really seen before. And I like it a lot.
Speaking of chignons, yeah.
Yeah, it looks really nice, and it has like a thick curl of hair down the side, which adds like a beautiful bit of edginess to it. Oh, and bows.
Yep.
So let's do some bow discourse.
Bows are back.
What do we think? Because if you're listening and you're sort of new to the podcast, we've made a big deal about bows in our rewatch.
Yeah.
We would sort of track the bows that she was wearing. She would wear big ones. The worst scene, which is the You Do Not Count scene, she had no fewer than 12 bows about her person.
She had 36 bows in the Beauty and the Beast scene.
Right. And now she's got them and she looks great and she's taken it and she's found a way to make bows work for her. And you know what? I respect that.
Yeah.
Congrats, Pen. For our bow rating, I'll give you a 0 out of 12.
Oh, yeah. Bow rating. God, those were the days.
But it's interesting what you're saying, Veg, because even things like the bows, which we associate with some of the worst moments, like the You Do Not Count, the Beauty and the Beast, it's been very like infantilizing for Penelope in her wardrobe, and it's always tied into moments where like Colin either hasn't been seeing her or has said something that alludes to her being like not a woman or something like that. Whereas here we have like she's being seen as a woman. She's aware that she's being seen as a woman, and it's this more mature look for her. But I think her hair being up like this, I wonder if it's because this is 303, right? So is she still getting to know him? If she's still a little bit more guarded, so she's not as vulnerable with her hair like falling down around her. It's a little bit more put together. But yeah, the blue. So Lecky, we've long theorised that the Rest Park pen, the blue pen, that she was standing next to Debling and that he was leading her in with her family to an event.
That hollow sound is the sound of your bread being done.
I think it's interesting that the other costuming we've seen from the other episodes have been this lighter, more Bridgerton palette. They haven't been like blue.
More saturated.
They've either been like a steely blue, or a sagey blue or a greeny blue, whereas I think it's hilarious that the 2 times we think we've seen her with Debling, she's like, bam,
blue,
bright Bridgerton blue. And if that's the kind of thing that Colin is going to see and freak about.
In terms of where they are, I think this scene predates Rest Park because I feel like if you look at the Rest Park leaks, her waves look softer and she has kind of like a headband.
And down.
And people think that that might be an off-the-shoulder dress. Either she's wearing like some sort of shawl or it's an off-the-shoulder dress. So I feel like this is one of her first early successes with Lord Debling. And then that ball at Rest Park is him escorting her into some sort of society event like a ball, and their relationship is getting further along.
And if it's off the shoulder, that's a little bit more of a more mature look. If Debling is making his intentions more known, if he is seeing her in that capacity as well, and she feels like she's being seen as a potential wife and partner.
Speaking of off the shoulder, we mentioned in a past episode that Lady Danbury has an off the shoulder dress, and in the Eloise still, the new one that we got, Violet has an almost off the shoulder dress.
Marcus, watch out, babe.
So that leads us to believe that if all of these characters have an off-the-shoulder dress, most likely Pen has had an off-the-shoulder dress, which quite frankly could be this Rest Park photo.
And would probably drive Colin even more crazy, to be honest. So that fits the theme.
So we mentioned how kind of reminiscent of Colin Debling is in this scene. Some of his classic outfit points, like the long-tailed coat, the little pocket watch chain, the high cravat. But I just wanted to readdress the goldness of his waistcoat. It's gold, but it's kind of like a yellowy gold. And I just think I've written down gold waistcoat, gold hair, gold heart.
Oh, stop it.
Because he looks cute.
His color scheme reminds me of young Colin from season 2. The blue jacket, golden waistcoat. I feel like he's very Colin coated in this scene.
Yes.
Colin's really going to have to come out in head to toe yellow at some point to win her back. and this is the thing, because that very much stakes his very genuine interest in Pen. If he fucking falls in love with her and can't be with her, I'm going to die.
He is.
How are we going to leave it? Like, well, this is another conversation, but
Maybe he can die.
just a couple of quick questions. Debling-y. If Debling's a conservationist, does that mean he's travelled? And if so, will that be another thing that upsets Colin? If Colin's like, oh my God, yeah, I went to Marbella. He was like, I was in Paris. I was in Cannes. I saw the film festival there whilst, all the soldiers were dying at the same time. And then Debling's in like, this time I was in South America. This time I was in Africa.
No, he's a member of the Royal Geographical Society. He's like a renowned traveler. And
I am telling you now, I've desperately wanted him to be like, I have this good friend, Sir Philip Crane, and Colin just cry.
We went to Greece together. Sorry.
Another question. Do you think Debling, because we said that Debling's been called an outsider, and we're suspecting he might be more comfortable in his status as an outsider, and that one of the things he offers Penelope is, come with me, we'll be outsiders together, and I'll love you for it. And we're not sure that's the best thing for her. But do you think that he intends to move Pen to the country? That option of being with him would remove her from society altogether and put her geographically distant as well as emotionally distant from Colin.
It's an interesting question because Lord Debling hasn't been in society up till now. So what has he been doing? Has he been traveling? Maybe he'll whisk Penelope off on his own travels, his own conservation efforts, or maybe he does live in the country like
He's really
that
cool
or something.
Chilling in his butterfly garden.
If he was a traveler, it'd be interesting if Colin at the end doesn't really want to travel as much because he's found his home in Penelope. He's no longer searching for something as a comparison.
I'd be pissed off. I'd be like, nah, boy, we're off to Italy. You're taking me to Italy right now. And this has come up a few times. When will the Debling storyline be wrapped up? So IMDb, that good old chestnut, has been floating around. Sam Phillips has been added to episode 1 and episode 3. In our Crumbs episodes, we theorised about when Debling would exit the storyline. And we think that on Sam Phillips's Spotlight, which is like his professional acting CV, he seems to only be under the first 2 blocks. So he only seems to be around episodes 1 to episode 4. Do you still think that that's his trajectory?
Yes.
No.
Oh, really?
Here's the thing. Even with Spotlight, sometimes they don't update it until after the season has come out. And so I think that they maybe wouldn't add anything because the second half of the series is still kind of a mystery to us, So maybe he is there a little bit longer than we think he is. Because in multiple seasons, the plot hasn't really resolved with whomever the character is until like episode 7 or 8, honestly. So I think that it's possible that he's probably still there around episode 7. Maybe not falling in love with Pen.
I definitely think it's possible. I personally think he'll be gone by episode 4. I know people...
That sounds so brutal. To be gone.
I think that there's some rumors swirling in the fandom because of his IMDb. He's listed under the first episode. I'd also like to know that Lady Tilly is also listed for episode 1, and we know she joins later in the season based on when she started filming.
Yeah.
And also he was added to episode 3, but that's just because the still of him in episode 3 was released. So I think there's a good chance he could appear at any time between episodes 1 to 4. We think he'll appear probably in episode 2, not 1, but we could be wrong.
Yeah.
But personally, from our Crumbs discussions, I was thinking that I think he exits the story in episode 4, and I think it's Penelope who breaks things off with him and realizes that she can't be with him because she doesn't love him, but at that same point, she's still resisting Colin. At that point, she thinks she's going to be with nobody, is what I think.
Well, this is a question. How far are things going to go between Pen and Debling? Do you think we're going to have a proposal? Do you think it's going to be very clear that he's going to propose? Do you think I don't think we're going to get anywhere near like a wedding or anything like that. I don't think we have time. I think the story has so much more to cover than being about like, oh my God, she's going to get married. I think the point needs to just be like the threat of him. Yeah. And then we move on to the other issues in the story.
Okay, so I think I have a very different opinion. I think that he's probably going to be there till probably around even maybe in episode 8. I think that I don't see that as like him and Pen are still going to be involved. He might just be in the ton or something like that, and then it gets resolved. Like him and Colin have like a conversation where he's like, "Sorry, bro, she's my girl," and he's like, "I get you, bro." That kind of like bro to bro talk.
Bro out.
Yeah. I hope we get a resolution for him where we see him going to be happy.
Yeah, and I think that resolution would take place later in the season rather than on episode 4. Especially if he's a one-season character, they like to drag them on as much as they can. They did it with Theo, they did it with Charithra's character.
He could be similar to the Prince, though, because the Prince was gone by episode 5.
Yeah, that's true. They did it with Sienna as well. He's a little bit more... the Prince also came in like episode 2. He was a very... So maybe. I believe he's probably going to be a little bit longer based on nothing. Based on absolutely nothing.
But in terms of the emotional journey, I don't know that like the emotional entanglement will carry on beyond episode 4.
I don't think it will continue. And if it does, it'll be the very beginning of episode 5 that it does, and then maybe he slowly slinks away in episode 6.
I do feel like pacing-wise, this season, the first couple of episodes will be very similar to season 1, which is why I also think that maybe he might leave in episode 4, but I think it'll be different in that Penelope will break things off with him rather than maybe the carriage scene happening and then her breaking things off.
Do you think it'll get as far as an engagement?
No, I don't. I think that based on sort of the number of scandals that both Penelope and Colin have been involved with, from a storytelling standpoint, and especially there'll be future scandals, presumably in this season, I think that they will probably just avoid that with Debling. Like, I know that a broken engagement is not the biggest thing, but if he proposes to her and they break it off, it just seems a bit much, a bit too many scandals.
Maybe he'll propose to her. I agree with Veg. I don't think there will be an engagement, but maybe he will propose to her and she'll say no.
Same. I don't think there will be an engagement. I think there may be a proposal, or Penelope may catch on that he's headed there. He hints that he's going to.
Or Debling will catch on that Colin loves Penelope.
Oh, and he breaks things off even though he loves her. Oh, Lord.
And then have a little kiki with Colin and be like, what are you doing? You love her.
Oh, God, that would make us all love him, too.
I don't think it's going to be like a scandal or anything like that. I think it's going to be a very emotional driven decision where, it could be a combination. Like you say, Lecky, she realises that she can't do it because she still loves Colin. And it's not with the intention of, I'm going to be with him. It's the intention of, I can't, for a start, it's not fair to you as a lovely person to do this. And two, I can't do it to myself. I'd rather be alone and a bit be true to myself. And or Debling, like you say, Beans, really perceiving as an outsider as well, coming in and have never seen them two together, seeing that they do love each other and being like, I love you, Penelope, or I could love you. And because of how I feel about you, I would rather you be truly happy. And he's like, I think you need to figure your shit out, but I'm going to bow out because I want you to have the happiness. Because he's such a good guy.
I think part of the reason it won't become a major scandal is because it won't be published. I think out of respect for Lord Debling, who specifically doesn't really like being in the limelight, Pen will purposely withhold it so as not to embarrass him and give him a chance at meeting somebody else.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Yeah. Again, coming from nowhere.
Absolutely. Bloody tragic. If we're suspecting that this is a kind of conflict that could happen around episode 4-ish in terms of this emotional moment and then the breaking off of this particular part of the storyline and the shift into the second half of the season, as we know, the season will be split. And we actually found out a little bit more about this from the showrunner Jess Brownell. She confirmed that the original plan was never to release it in 2 parts and that this was something that was a decision by Netflix, most likely in response to the strikes. But she says that what happened is they didn't originally plan it that way, but Netflix came to us and we had a natural break in the middle of episode 4, which is something we've observed before about the seasons. They do have this turn in the season that made sense for them to then split it. And she said there was a big moment between the main couple at the end of the season's first installment. And she says it's going to leave fans with a lot of time for speculation and anticipation. So if we're maybe theorising that episode 4 looks like this Debling story gets wrapped up, I don't think Pen and Colin are together at that point. I think that messiness happens with them still being apart. But what is this big moment going to be?
I think it's going to be the beginning of the blackmail plot.
So we're going to get that kick in the story, and then are we going to get carriage, I assume?
I think we think it's carriage.
I think it might be the rejected proposal, the rejection.
Because I think they interact with each other very nicely if it's like the internal conflict of like the relationship and then the external. If they have the carriage scene and she rejects him, you're perfectly setting that up for like he wants to be with her, protect her. And how could that possibly be even more heightened than this external threat of the blackmail or like some aspect of like the bounty, like that ramping up that is an even bigger reason why he wants to be with her. And it all just kind of ties in well that we then break.
There's nothing behind it, and I will be able to give details later, but there's something, I don't know what it is that someone said, but there's a vibe that there won't be a rejected proposal, and I was always really for it. And I don't know why, but I'm doubting. That's all I'll say.
Are you getting tingly nipples?
Sorry?
Are you getting tingly nipples?
Oh, yeah, they're buzzing away.
It sounds like they haven't really had to do much figuring out to like make it work that way, and that it's just going to naturally fall that way. Speaking of timelines, are you ready for this week's edition of What the Fuck is Happening in episode 2? Where 4 clowns try and fail to piece together any semblance of narrative for 302, How Bright the Moon. So this is our continued attempts at trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. Any updates? In terms of the lessons, we got new still with the lessons, or the aftermath of the lessons. Like, you've been having a thought this week about it. In terms of, do you think the lessons are going to fall apart after only one lesson?
No, I mean, we joked about it, that it'd be very Colin. There's the still of him on the floor, basically in full view of her assets, so to speak, and for them to have that intimate moment and for him to snap after just one lesson would be hilarious, but I don't think it'll be that quick. I think something else happens.
So in terms of the hand cutting scene, just to address a couple of points in here as well, we're still not 100% sure on the location, I don't think. I know I was very much all for it being Colin's bedroom the other day. Can't decide. I think it's got blue curtains in the room. I don't know where they are. They might just be in the room in the Bridgerton house.
It's the rug.
Still think that he smuggled her out into a different room.
The wall panels are actually similar to one section of the drawing room has a more square wall molding. So it could be either the drawing room or Colin's bedroom.
Because it's the same set that's redressed.
Because we found the square molding.
Calm down, everyone. The square has been found. It could be Colin's bedroom and they've redressed and they've like updated it because he's now the main character. So it needs to be a bit more of a...
Yeah, because it's like yellow. The molding looks yellow in the picture. Could be the lighting, but I don't know.
Also, in terms of the hand cutting scene, I don't know, it looks like he's crouching on something, he's sitting on something. Pen's possibly on her knees in front of him as she tends to him. But, Veg, how are they looking?
So we've done a bit of discussion about how they've looked before, but what's key here is about sort of the changes. So people have discussed what the bandage is. Colin's cravat stays on his neck.
Sadly.
So that clears that one up. And then people are also talking about where they've got this bandage from and if it's from his pocket, as it is in the book. So in the book, she lifts it
like a
out of his breast pocket. He doesn't have a breast pocket. So the alternative is like trouser pocket, but that seems a bit much.
Well, we'll get onto that because who fucking knows these days with episode 2.
But Colin sort of looks as he does in the previous scene. But there is a very slight and very significant, saucy change for Pen. So if you pause just the right moment in the lessons clip, you can just about see that she has sort of a short wrist length silk glove that's sort of a light green. And then in the still, she does not have any gloves on at all. Scandal.
Scandal. How are you saying, Veg, that we have skin on skin finger contact?
I think that's what I'm saying. And in a Regency drama, that is a big deal. So if anyone's watched Emma brackets 2020, close brackets, you will know that scene when Emma and Mr. Knightley have their first meaningful dance. They're barehanded, touching each other, and it's, the heat, the tension, can't deal. So, yeah, that is the big costume point here.
So do we think she took them off because... I was thinking maybe he told her to take them off because he didn't want to get blood on them.
Stop. Take off your gloves, but I can't. It's too much.
Do you think he's going to get absolutely enraptured by her bare fingers?
Or what if she takes them off to be like, let me try to put this on, and he's like, no, that's fucking mesh. That's not going to do anything.
Oh yeah, she's still got her little necklace thing. And sort of semi-related to costumes, more of a prop. I must pay some respects, I guess, to a few people who've messaged us about a candle. People have said that in the still, a candle is in a suggestive position. Get your mind out of the gutter, people, but you won't have to stay out of the gutter for long if Luke's assertions about Ep 2 are anything to go off.
Absolutely, because this is throwing us. We know this scene is taking place in episode 2, as apparently every fucking thing is. What a busy episode. In terms of what we can expect from episode 2, in terms of the steaminess, now, when Quinn asked our leads about leading on from this scene, the letter scene, but then as a opening 2 episodes as a whole, Nick said, when I watched it, I kind of went, holy moly, I didn't realise it was that much. And Luke went on to say, we've seen the 2 episodes so far and we get right into it, like straight away. Nick hinted that it was the tip of the iceberg, and Luke continued, it's a real sexy season, not just for us, but for everyone. It's almost like everyone's been struck with a love potion or something. Everyone's at it. But Luke said he wouldn't watch this episode with his mum. What the fuck fuck? And we'll get into Moonlight Pollen in a minute, but what the fuck is happening in episode 2? Do we think anything happens in this scene?
No.
Because it sounds like they're going to kick things off.
I think dream. It's my theory.
Yeah, I think there might be a fantasy now, just judging by this interview and what was said. I think that there is a sexy fantasy.
A wild fantasy.
On Colin's part.
Do you think someone's dreaming?
Yeah.
A wild fantasy.
Yeah. But I don't think it takes place after the letter opener. I think it takes place maybe after Australia.
We'll get into the timeline in just a second, but it would there tends to be a dream sequence at some point, right?
Yeah.
And we did wonder whether it'd be like episode 2, episode 3. It's kind of this area. But, it would make sense with the title of the episode and the theme of the episode. It seems to be about the moon, night. It's got celestial vibes. What happens at night? The dreaming, sleep state. I think the whole thing is going to be his wildest fantasies.
Yeah. And then it almost makes more sense for him to have his wet dream, his fantasy after the lunar ball, right?
But are we going to have both the flashback and the fantasy in the same episode?
No, I think the flashback's going to come later.
People are speculating the flashback might be episode 4. Now, I still want it to be early. I don't know when it would come.
It could be episode 3.
But just based on this interview, I think that there might be a fantasy scene.
Isn't it ironic that that's going to be the thing that wakes him up?
Well, I think genuinely, dreams work. Because dreams got me into Pollen in the first place.
How's that worked out for you, Veg? Okay, so we've been trying and failing horrifically at trying to piece together this episode 2 timeline. It seems like every time we find out more information about it, it just complicates it threefold. We have quite a few established scenes. Let's try and assemble them into some kind of timeline. Okay, so we've had a little chat about this behind the scenes. I'm going to go through it, but by all means, jump in. We can move things around. Again, I can't stress you enough, this is evidently going to be wrong because the whole thing, I think the entire fandom is completely confused by how much is going to happen. And then hearing things about the spiciness, it makes it even more confusing. So let's say that the first known scene is the market scene. It's kind of harmless, it's cocky Colin, but he's like Penelope softening around him because she's looking at him, she's meeting his eye. It's like that Water Barb 2.0, Lord Whistledown, but I think he's still in control of this confidence, I've got it, it's all good. Beans, it's like that transition-y dress that we were talking about a few times, that she's very much still in progress from episode 1 to episode 2. We're good with Market Pollen being the opening that we know so far.
Yeah.
And then we move into our lessons. We have the remarkable shade of blue scene that came out where we can maybe have the idea that Colin feels like he's in control of the situation. It's very harmless in terms of he's like, I'm helping a bestie out. And then the moment happens there where she breaks through to him with the compliment that she gives him and sends his praise kink flying through the sky because he ain't cruel anymore. He's kind. Which means that then within the same set of sequences, we immediately must have the hand cutting scene because they're in the same costuming and everything like that. At some point they go into a different room, different space. And for some reason, probably the journal scene, he cuts his hand. Do you think something happens in the hand cutting scene? Either in his head, it might actually happen, or do you think there's an almost moment between them?
I think they have a moment. I don't think it's like a near kiss or anything. I think they just have another moment. But I don't think this is the moment that sparks the dream.
Okay, we don't think we're in first kiss territory. Do we think his brain is very slightly starting to crack a little bit?
Yeah.
So how about then we go over to Austerley for our little lunar-themed ball. Let's head on over there with her empty dance card. It's still not going great. Her costume slightly changed, but he's by her side with his injured hand. We've got the Austerley scene. We don't know what's going to really happen at Austerley. We don't suspect Debling comes in just then. And then post-Austerley, Lecky, are you still on idea that we're going to have a post-Austerley montage?
Yeah, but I have a kind of different opinion of it now than I did before. So before I thought it'd be kind of a montage that showed Penelope becoming slowly more successful with suitors, intercut with their lessons. And I still agree that that could happen, but I think the lessons will be more sexually charged, where in intercut with the lessons, we might see little moments of a hand graze or just these moments where they keep getting caught up in each other to this point where there's a scene where they have an intense moment, a near kiss, an actual near kiss moment. And that is what prompts Colin to have his dream, and you can continue from here.
So do you think this is the point of where what Nicola said, like, I'm not in love with you, what could possibly go wrong? Do you think this is shit? It's like a doomed montage where we see it starting to go wrong, that their plan is doomed.
Yeah, for both of them. Yeah, and then they have a moment, it has to be like a near kiss or something, where it's like so obvious that Pen panics and Colin, his subconscious, can't fight it anymore, and he has that dream, is what I think.
So do you think he's going to tire himself out from a very busy day of lecturing and hands-on tuition, very committed to education, isn't he, bless him? Do you think he's going to go to sleep?
Has the dream.
Do you think he's going to have a little dream? At the same time, do we think maybe Miss Penelope is skedaddling through the streets of Bloomsbury? Do you think that if they do have this moment where they're too close, that she's going to go the opposite way and be like, we need distance?
Yes. And I think this is where she writes something in Lady Whistledown. I think that she either makes a remark about Penelope's relationship with Lord Debling, or the impossibility of Pollen, just kind of has like a throwaway remark about, you know, Colin and Penelope would never be together. And then Colin wakes up the next morning and he's like, I don't want it to be impossible. Like, I want to be with Pen.
Yeah.
And that's what propels him to go see her in the moonlight scene, is what I think.
So do you think that he wakes up?
Yeah. He's disheveled. He's had the dream.
He goes downstairs in his little unicorny self. He's got his little fantasy unicorn on.
His his waistcoat is like half open. He trundles downstairs, reads Lady Whistledown. Yeah, like on top of having that dream, he has these words from Lady Whistledown about how maybe they may never be together, and it just ratchets up the tension.
So his brain has exploded, and then we don't know, he's maybe going to go around the day like, maybe he tries to speak to her, maybe he can't speak to her, maybe he goes to the bar, maybe he's like completely frazzled by everything. That's his reckoning for him, isn't it? Like waking up from something like that.
During the window pen moment, it could be that Penelope has missed a lesson or something like that. Like she hasn't gone to see him that day.
Yeah. And she's gazing out the window, knowing that she's written something that's put
distance between them.
That distance between them, or reestablished. So later that day with Unicolin and Window Pen, they transform into Moonlight Pollen. They're wearing the same costumes. So we have the ever-growing mystery of the moonlight scene. Now, the good thing about the 301 scene is that it does establish that Penelope can wear her hair down at balls, which means that Window Pen definitely could either be at a ball, or it could be a post-ball look, like she's gone home or something like that. How are we feeling about Moonlight Pollen now?
Her hair is pinned back in the clip that we got, though, to be fair, and it isn't in this one.
So he looks very dishevelled. Do you think he's maybe crashed a ball? Do you think he's lost his mind and crashed a ball? Or do you think this is a private moment?
I think it's a private moment. I'm not sure if it's a ball. I can't say. All I know is, like Nicola said, it's in a garden and they're in the dark. There's a topiary.
Okay, so they're in a garden. In the dark, there's a topiary that we're still trying to track down. Vegetable. We've talked about Moonlight Pen's dress at length. It's beautiful, isn't it? But Nicola used this opportunity to talk more about this, and we learnt some very interesting bits of information. What is going on with Moonlight Pen's dress?
Oh, brother, let me tell you. So she spoke in an interview and she said there's one dress that's been in the pictures that have been released. We're in the garden in the dark. We're quite close. That dress, I can't tell you the nickname because it spoils what the scene's about. Oh. But when I first tried on just the fabric for that dress before it was made, I almost cried genuinely because it was just beautiful. It was like a work of art. So, moment for the dress. Woohoo, love it. We agree it's beautiful.
This is the dress that she alluded to way back in the Kelly Clarkson interview.
But, oh my goodness, what is this scene about? What have they called it?
Something happens in the scene that is so important that the dress can be known by it. What are we thinking?
First kiss.
Do you think it's the first kiss dress?
Yeah, I feel like the other option is that this is Colin's fantasy. This is a fantasy sequence. But I think that the vulnerability in Penelope's face is too real for it to be a dream. So I think this is the first kiss dress.
I don't think he'd be able to conjure that emotion from her.
Yeah.
From his memories of her, no.
I think that's exposing for her in a way that he doesn't realise the extent of how...
Yeah, if you go back and watch the dream sequence from season 1 where Daphne is remembering the way that she and Simon danced at Vauxhall, Simon is very almost like an ethereal presence, and Penelope here is so real and in tune with her emotions and vulnerable that I think it can't be a dream.
Yeah. I think it's first kiss. I think it's going to play out differently than the books. They're going to get interrupted during like the lessons or whatever, or asking him. She's going to do it like at the ball. But I don't know. I think he seems a little too distressed when he comes towards her.
Unhinged.
Yeah. So maybe he's distressed about something else. And then they kiss anyway.
I think he's intent. I think he goes there knowing that he wants her.
I'm going to say I'm kind of at the point where I just don't know anymore, you know?
Should we wrap up the pod?
Yeah.
I tell you what though, a lot of people, even before we started saying it, it is very much popular opinion that this is the kiss scene. Like, were this a government position, it would be absolutely winning. So
I wonder if like she has done something like write something very damning to put distance between him, and this is what combined with the dream has really like got him into this frenzy, and he hasn't been able to see her all day. If he's going to her with this intention, like you say, Lucky, basically I think that if this is that scene, the first kiss scene, that I don't think this is like a very sweet moment where Pen's like, oh, kiss me please, I just, you know, do us a favour. I think this is a very intense moment that Pen is 100% wrapped up in, and then pulls herself out of it and is deeply upset by what's happened because she's confused.
So I think this could be, we've talked about the rejected proposal, but maybe it could even be at this point he could kiss her and do the classic you know, proposal of propriety, and she could reject it in ep 2. Like, it could even come that earlier. I don't think it will be, but maybe.
But I like the idea of her rejecting his intentions and being like, no, absolutely not, because then in the next episode she's with Debling, which is going to make him so fucking unhinged.
We know that there are so many Pollen scenes in episode 2.
Yeah,
and the idea of a dream, I also like that, because it's almost like they're throwing them together so much in person and even in their fantasies to propel them into Colin pursuing Penelope in episode 3. Is what I was thinking. They just need that relationship to move fast. And by throwing them together constantly in this episode, they get there much quicker.
And it ties back to what Luke said. He was like, it's not just a simple case of, oh, he realises, great. Once he starts making that journey of realisation, she's moving the other way. And at times directly pushing him away as well.
Yeah.
Well, kids. We will be coming back to episode 2 more and more and more, because the more we try to put it together, like the more it unravels. But shall we move on from Pollen and see how Eloise and Penelopes are doing? So in terms of Eloise, we did mention her the other day, but Claudia reflected on the level of the betrayal. She says it's quite large. I don't think it's going to be made up quite quickly, but they're both so young. She reflected on how Eloise comes from a very comfortable place and what happened was such a big blow to her. And Shonda Rhimes described this as the second love story of the season. And again, a storyline that we were taken surprised by was that Eloise is going to embrace the Ton's traditions and expectations. And Claudia reflected that this does go against every part of her nature.
Something that came to me when I saw this still was that in the background, Violet looks slightly concerned, like she's looking at Elle.
Like knowing that it's not right.
And it reminded me that by the end of season 2, Violet has kind of accepted that Eloise wants another path. She wants something else out of life than their traditional debutante role.
And that's what she encouraged her at the ball. She was like, I just want you to be yourself.
Yeah, and so I feel like maybe she will be concerned by this path that Elle starts to walk in season 3.
And Luke Thompson reflected on that and said that, you know, we've seen Eloise in a certain way, but we're going to get a slightly different side to her. But then that being an opportunity to discover more. And I did wonder, Jess in the EW article ages ago reflected that they're not ruling love out for Eloise. Do you think she's going to maybe have not a love interest this season, but do you think she's going to be with suitors? Do you think she's going to get further with that? Or is it going to be more about her in society with like the other women and things like that?
I think her in society with other women. Like I said last time, I think she's playing the game.
Yeah.
I think what Pen said to her, she took to heart. She realized that Pen was able to sort of talk about things that she wouldn't have normally been able to. So I think that Eloise thinks if she plays the game, then she can start small and start talking to the women in the Ton to be like, you can realize bigger things for your life. I think it's going to be more of that than romance at this point.
Yeah. And Claudia touched on that a little bit, and she said everyone's reaction to her is a lovable eye roll, but she's trying this other way. But I don't know if that's necessarily going to work full time for her either. I don't know if it's sustainable for someone with her character. So I think we'll see her internal battle. And then we talked a little bit last time about this protective nature that we might see with Colin in particular. And Luke said they're protective of each other at the best of times, but I think this has been such a a huge thing for Colin as well, with all the things that has been revealed in Whistledown, which we now know that Colin's moved on from the Marina situation. But it sounds a little bit like this is going to come into play with Eloise's perception of Colin and the Polin relationship. She is still pertinently aware of the damage that was inflicted. She's going to be reacting out against that.
Yeah.
And Luke said it's not like a romantic love triangle, but there's a triangle going on there for sure. And then Nick said that Eloise and Colin are the two loves of her life, which is very sweet. So a big journey going ahead for Eloise.
So one little Easter egg on Elle's dress, and there's been a bit of discourse around it, but she's got these sort of big flowers on her dress.
They've Easter egged
Not actual Easter eggs, but like...
Eloise with flowers throughout the whole 2 seasons. So it's a reminder that these characters might not know where they're going, but they're on this journey that will eventually take them to who they want to be.
Yeah.
Speaking of people on big journeys this season, we have a bit of Benedict, who is taken us all by surprise. And there was talk about how Benedict is still struggling to find his footing with what he wants from life. And Luke Thompson picked up on this. He has given up on the art. That was definitely another wound, like Eloise, that really cut deep and has lingered with him. And he says we're opening with him taking on the responsibilities that Anthony used to have and doing it quite well. So he's good at it. But then this is a problem that Luke identifies with Benedict, that because he's able to wear different hats, because he's able to move into different spheres. We've spoken a little bit before about how he's quite a transitional character in that he can move within these different realms, but because he can do that, it's almost paralyzing for his character. Luke said there's a nice freedom to that, but with freedom comes a slight sense of loneliness. It's nice to have the choice to do anything and float about, but you get a sense more and more that freedom is a dilemma. It's a bit paralyzing and can complicate the sense of who you are. I have to give a shout out to Luke during this whole panel because he was so scared of saying spoilers and he couldn't say anything and he kept tripping up over himself. But Luke said this impulsive side of him is going to come to a head. The pressure that's been cooking in on him since season 1 is, and then everyone interrupted him because he's about to spoil something. So how are you feeling about Ben? And we're going to come on to the Cantony bit. You can bring Cantony into it now, really, but it's interesting that Anthony's going to have relinquished some of his responsibilities over to Benedict, and that Benedict is taking that on, but also succeeding at it. But that in itself being quite a paralysing aspect.
Well, I was just thinking, since I did that accidental rewatch, Anthony does address something like that. So I think it was a bit of a foreshadow that we never noticed. Give me a second. Shush. Thank you. He says, just because you're a second brother doesn't mean that you don't have responsibilities as well, or something along the lines of that.
That's a good point.
And so I think it's basically Benedict, again, has taken that to heart. And as we have seen so far, there are so many similar themes that are going into every one of the characters, which we have mentioned before. I think for all of the characters, they are doing that in a way, and they're trying to approach things differently than they have in previous seasons, because everyone feels, especially since season 2, that there's been a shakeup in their core being of who they are and what it is that they want from their lives, etc.
And then within their family of Anthony marrying.
Right. And so I feel like with Anthony, I think that he's going to have other things that he's maybe preoccupied with.
His pregnancy.
And I think that Ben is going to sort of take on that role in order to help alleviate Anthony, or maybe Anthony's even like, hey, I'm not going to touch this because I'm married and I'm chill now. I think, they're all going on their own journeys, as we've seen. It's the universal theme of this season. Everybody's kind of stepping out of their own shadow. I think we all expected to see the same Benedict, so everyone's really kind of been thrown off by what this could mean. And so I think I was a little bit thrown off as well. But upon watching season 2, it does make a little bit of sense.
Yeah, I feel like in the last article we got about Benedict, they said that he'll be bouncing around from place to place like he has in the past 2 seasons. And I feel like we just kind of misinterpreted that. We thought we'd be seeing kind of more of the same. And it is more of the same. It's just that he's trying new things and the things don't work for him. Like what Beans was saying. Now he's trying to be the responsible second son. That's not going to work for him either.
And there's an interesting parallel between Elle and Ben there, because I think the way we left them at the end of last season, they both suffered these very fundamental cuts to the things they cared about the most, or the things that affirmed their sense of self. Her friendship with Penelope and her belief that she was really smart and on it with the Lady Withstand thing before being revealed and made to feel a bit foolish. And then with Benedict, his loss of art. So you have these 2 siblings who are coping with these deep cuts to them by going, this hasn't worked. I'm going to try something else entirely then, which is a very human thing to do, isn't it? It's to be like, fuck it, I'll do exactly the opposite. We haven't seen much Cantony in the promo thus far. We did get the photo of them at Christmas. Do you think that's a deliberate choice because it's really hard not to spoil the fact that Kate's probably pregnant?
Yeah, I think she's pregnant, and I think that's why Benedict is taking over some responsibilities for Antony.
So to sweep up our other characters, as we now know, the Mondriches are going to be inheriting a title, which is really exciting. And that Martin de Mongbay said that they're drawn out of the shadows. So this is something that isn't their choice. It's kind of thrown upon them. And a lot of their story as a family will be how they navigate this new title, this new position. How does it impact the family dynamics? And that Will finds that this trade-off's becoming part of the ton, and Will is going to struggle to stay true to who he is, whilst also being a part of this society that he'd previously interacted with, but had never fully been in. One thing I do love is that the host said that Will has become a confidant of the ton through his bar. I love the idea of like Will's bar being like the place to go, because at least there's 2 married people in the ton who know their shit about marriage.
Yeah.
So do you think we are going to get that aspect of Will and Colin as a confidant?
Maybe I was thinking it could even be Ben and Will at the same time, because they're both going through a change, and I'm wondering if like part of that is Will maybe questioning if he has to get rid of his bar to keep up with like his position within the ton and to keep up with appearances.
Because he shouldn't be working.
Yeah, he should be working on other things that have to deal with their
estate,
whatever goes on with being titled. Yeah, so maybe it could even be like a bond with Ben, because they both are questioning giving up things that they liked and stepping into these new roles and new positions within their life. So now upon reflection, even though I'd love for Will and Colin to be friends, I feel like it makes a little bit more sense for Ben and Will to be friends, because they're both figuring out this tumultuous time within their lives.
It might be a case that his bar is like this place where everyone who's struggling within their own storylines comes in and intersects. So you might get like John coming in, you might get Michael, and Will, whilst trying to find his own place, is also trying to like be there for all these disparate characters. But in terms of Will and Colin, Lecky, we've had a very interesting little tidbit about the two, because we obviously left them in 208 with Colin bringing all his friends over to Will's bar, but still very much affirming that Colin felt there was a debt to still be paid. How's that looking for the next season?
So Martins was asked if Will cash in on Colin's debt next season, and he said, yeah, he does. He does more than cash in, and Colin delivers. Aww. So I feel like they will be interacting significantly in season 3. And he also spoke about Will's bar and kind of touching on what Bean said about maybe he has to step away from the bar a little bit. I wonder if it's just that he becomes more of like a manager and is not there all the time, but might still like interact with some of his patrons occasionally, because he said the bar becomes a safe space for people to commune. And I think there's a buzz in Will's bar, which is exciting to be a part of. So I feel like that's going to be like the new hotspot for society to interact. We've speculated before that it might be not just like members of the ton, but maybe some other people, like artists and things. But
I like the idea about it being a safe space. That's a really nice place to explore. Any ideas on what Colin might do? Do you think it's just going to be more of the same of like, here's all my pals? Because we know there's enough fucking lords out there to keep Will in business for decades at the rate that we're going. Or do you think Colin, who is this character who's going to be stepping into the light, might help bring Will and ease that transition?
Maybe. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And support his family and endorse his family. As a Bridgerton who again has power, and this recurring theme that Pen and Colin are going to find their power this season, is it going to be in ways like that, like, I'm at peace with who I am as a person in this family, let me use that for good?
Yeah. Colin would be a good support for him as he learns to kind of navigate his new role in the ton, his new status.
Segueing slightly to the highest part of society, we've got the Queen, and Golda did allude to the fact that yes, the Queen is going to get bored, and when the Queen gets bored, we know we're all in trouble. She says that we find her bored of what's gone before and searching for something different. She's a little bit bored of the women that are curtsying in front of her. So we already know that there's going to be a different title, perhaps. We've all speculated there's an emerald. Again, what does this mean for Fran then? If the Queen has been bored of the same old diamonds, is this going to impact Fran's journey? Again, she's slightly more reticent in society anyway, but I think we all know that the Queen getting bored means that a shake-up with Lady Whistledown Search is on the cards.
I wonder if that still from episode 1 of Violet and Fran is something that could have, it likely happens after her presentation. And if there is no diamond named after her presentation in like the first ball of the season, I wonder if Violet is trying to reassure Fran or something like that. And Fran doesn't really care. She's like, she's clutching her music sheets. She just never really wanted to be in the spotlight anyway. And I feel like maybe that scene is kind of showing that she didn't even really want to be the diamond.
She's been compared to Daphne, but she's her own person as well. And it's like a twist on that. And Cat Quinn asked Golda, how does Queen Charlotte's relationship with Penelope change in season 3? And Golda said, so the rivalry continues with the Queen and Penelope. I can't say too much what's going to happen. They get very close indeed. Their spaces become a little closer.
Her hand gestures were even really interesting. She was showing her hands moving in closer, like their worlds are going to collide. Like they're just being forced into a confrontation.
Because you've got the Queen, who is the centre of society, the sun almost, and then Penelope, who has been around in the shadows, whereas when she's been drawn in, there's going to be more overlap. And I wonder if part of this overlap is going to become with someone in common that they're both going to know. Lady Danbury. First of all, Adjua had so many fascinating things to say about Lady Danbury in this season. Lady Danbury uses her knowledge as her superpower, the way to navigate society. She's seen a lot, she's experienced a lot, and she feels quite confident in knowing that. And this season is really going to upend that because of the arrival, who we believe to be Marcus Anderson. And she's going to be worried about how this new person is going to knock me off my game. Are they going to put cracks in my carefully crafted facade? Is it going to mess up my relationships with long established and beloved relationships? So we're going to see Lady Danbury on the back foot and not in control of her emotions, which is fascinating.
This kind of reiterated for me that Marcus may be a somewhat disruptive figure from Lady Danbury's past that could complicate her relationships with people like the Bridgertons.
But Lady Danbury's always had a very close relationship with the Bridgertons, and Adjua said that this is because she carries this huge life-changing love for Lord Ledger, and it informs almost every fibre of her being, and we get an understanding of why she's so invested in the Bridgerton family. But in terms of a Pollen storyline then, Lecky, I believe we have some updates on the good old Penelope-Lady Danbury relationship.
She basically alluded to the fact that they will become friends, that they will have a relationship in season 3, which is so exciting.
Love it so much.
Adjua said, Lady Danbury loves the self-starterness of Penelope, the brightness, the wit, and she also sees that young woman who's deciding to make choices for her own life because nobody around her is going to make good choices for her. And she said that the love and encouragement that Lady Danbury feels for Penelope, she wants to just boost in there wherever she can, which kind of hints that they may have multiple scenes together. I'm so excited.
We've always wondered about the Lady Danbury storyline. It's such a huge core part of the book.
Yeah.
But it sounds like they're also just going to have an affectionate relationship. It's not just going to be like she happens to be in the same sphere, or it's just through the Bridgerton storyline. There's something within Penelope that she recognises within herself that she wants to nurture.
Yeah. And also in this quote, she said that nobody around Penelope is going to make good choices for her. And I wondered if that was another allusion to maybe Portia's role in this season. If Portia is going to be trying to either force Penelope to marry off this season or to accept that she will always be a spinster if she doesn't find a match this season or something like that.
Yeah. Do you think, in terms of Portia, do you think that word spinster from Penelope is coming from Portia?
Interesting. It could. Penelope has very low self-confidence anyway, that she may have already accepted that she's going to be a spinster. But if Portia is kind of reinforcing that idea and saying like, oh, you know, you're never going to marry, you could just stay with me.
I don't know, I think she's coming back with a plan. We've seen her arrival in Bath in the Bath Leagues.
But Portia could have played into that somehow. Yeah. Portia may not have inspired her plan to find a suitor, but it may just be one of those things that drives her even more.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And the things that are still in the back of her head. That worst part of Portia is the voice that comes out. And so if she has that catastrophic scene in 301 where she fails spectacularly, that in that low moment, the voices that come out it's like Portia's assessment of her.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's pretty much all the main characters. I'm so excited about the Lady Danbury of it all. I think it's very interesting that if Lady Danbury is driven by her allegiance with the Bridgertons through Lord Ledger, but also her allegiance that she might develop with Penelope, I think that's interesting. Do you think she's going to recognise the Pollen relationship and push them to each other?
I almost wonder if she'll just see some of herself in Penelope. We talked about this during our season 1 rewatch, but in Lady Danbury's speech to young Simon, it's like so glaringly similar to the words that Penelope needs to hear. And the phrase into the light isn't even in the quote. So in her speech to young Simon in season 1, she said, "When I was a girl some centuries ago, I was afraid even of my own reflection. I entered a room and attempted to dissolve into the shadows. But there is only so long one in a position such as ours can hide. I knew I would have to step into the light someday, and I could not very well be frightened. So instead I made myself frightening, I sharpened my wit, my wardrobe, and my eye, and I made myself the most terrifying creature in any room I entered. Come, you can speak, I understand you well enough, and I will help you to overcome this stammer of yours, but in exchange you must promise me that when you step into the light, you will be worthy of the attention you command. The parallels between Penelope and Lady Debray there are so strong, yeah.
And then for Penelope, almost the purpose scene, it keeps coming back to me about Penelope wanting to find something that makes her brave and witty.
Yeah.
And that combination of like the Lady Danbury approach with what Penelope has wanted for her life, it's perfectly setting up Penelope's journey. But that phrase, into the light, I wonder if that's where it's come from. It's come from somewhere, and it's very sweet. To wrap up a little bit, we've left all of our characters. We know where they're hanging out. Just a few closing thoughts, a few other bits and pieces. So Nicola and Luke talked a lot about the intimate scenes, and Nicola reinforced that they serve a strong narrative purpose. And she talked about the vulnerability, but how important they are to the story. They're not throwaway. And they both reflected on how they both felt very taken care of, and they felt like they had each other's backs, which is so lovely to know that they had a positive behind the scenes experience with that. Talking about behind the scenes shenanigans, they also talked a little bit about adapting the book to the screen and the consideration of the fans. Nicola said that they saw some things on social media that fans would really want, and they would go to Jess in these moments and to see if they could explore incorporating that.
How cool is that?
And that Jess, as a showrunner, was really responsive to it.
Exciting.
And so Nick and Newt would be like, can we get this in? And they try. And I can't remember the interview, but there was one point where this is where the Mr. Bridgerton has been included from.
Yeah. They're the captains of the ship, aren't they? They're amazing.
Yeah, they saw that the fans really wanted the Mr. Bridgerton, so that has been incorporated. Let's all pray we've all been vocal enough about Berkeley Square, eh? So Jess said that there was a book Easter egg in almost every episode, so be it a scene or a line from the book to look for. And Luke said that they were nervous when there were things from the books because they knew the fans were so invested in those moments being translated to screen. And so we've got a lot to look out for in terms of that, and it's so lovely that that was a consideration. We appreciate it so dearly that the care has been put into not only crafting the story but trying to get those little moments, because it's not going to be direct adaptation, we all know that, but these little nods are so appreciated. And then just in terms of wrapping up, there was a very sweet moment where the cast were able to reflect on how the show has changed their life. I think Martin Zimongbe said something so beautiful that he said, it's given me a lot more hope in storytelling, which is wonderful.
I love that. That was so touching. I feel like they made it a mission to make sure he wasn't just a throwaway character.
Like a peripheral character.
Yeah. They've given him an arc every season. They've taken his character to new places. His character continues to grow, and he so obviously could just be a background character, like Lord Fife. But their decision to invest in his character and this black family in the town, increasing, like, you know, the diversity of the show is great.
I agree.
And Adjua said that this show makes space for everybody.
Well, I loved what she said about when she was back in Ghana and someone came up to her and she represented her as a woman, as an older woman, and as like an African woman. I thought there's so many groups, like it is representation. It's just amazing.
And this thing, because it could be seen as like a throwaway show almost. And Luke Thompson said that it's a holiday, but he said this in a very positive way. He was like, this is a world where you can come back from it feeling a little hopeful, a little warm.
Such positive representation.
And Julia said that we need more elevation of happiness. I think everyone feels that these days. And it's that reiteration that there is a place in the world for all forms of storytelling. Shonda said this season leads into the idea of untold stories and celebrating untold stories and celebrating stories that are like love and romance, which could so easily be dismissed as less than or not as important. And Nicola said, make people who feel not seen, seen, and make everyone realise how deserving and worthy they are of love. And the closing remarks, Adjua said it so beautifully, season 3 is for all us wallflowers.
I love that.
It's really going to be a season where we talked so many times about the themes of light and being seen for these characters, but it's also that the audience is taking that away with them as well.
I just want to hone in on the phrase untold stories is so interesting, because I feel like at this point it's the 3rd season and Colin is still kind of a mystery. He's kind of an old untold story, and I feel like this also kind of alludes to Lady Danbury's past and how that might be revisited after Queen Charlotte and other things. But I really love this phrase, untold stories. I'm really excited to see how that plays out.
Yeah, and that's the thing, the ability to take characters who are familiar and to reveal the other sides of them, or to be able to give them a voice for their stories is such a beautiful idea. So, Lecky, it's later in the week. It's Thursday night for us. We've had a few days. There's been a lot going on. It's been a chaotic week, so I thought I'd grab you on a call, sweep up some crumbs with us. Are you up for it?
Yep.
So, what's been going on? as we know, the fallout from this live stream event continues to ricochet through our lives.
It's like the never-ending slow trickle of information. But more press clips from the live stream event have been released throughout the week. In particular, Nick and Newt stated that they will be going on a world tour between the releases to go meet the fans properly for the first time, which is super exciting. Luke also said that something happens at the end of episode 4 that people need time to digest, with Nicola adding that it's a big moment, a huge cliffhanger.
So that really adds on to what Jess was saying at the event as well, because she hinted as well there's going to be
the natural break.
Going to be a big cliffhanger.
Also, in an interview with AP, Adjoa said that the season was touching as it was a moment for the wallflower to get her moment in the sun, saying she too had been a wallflower herself when she was younger. Adjoa also had some interesting things to say about Colin and Penelope. She described Colin as not flashy. She said he's not Antony, he's not Simon. He is solid and finding his way in the world by traveling and remaking himself from being in the world and finding what excites and interests him. Penelope, she's not the most glamorous or considered the most attractive of the Featherington girls, but she is smart as a whip. She is funny, she is tender, she's vulnerable, and then she ended by kind of inferring that they're both wallflowers in a way. Of Penelope's, Claudia said, it's a big betrayal, but it's a great example of how people fall apart, people unravel, people do things and maybe they don't handle it the best, but don't remove all hope from your heart, babe. In an interview with Kat Quinn, Adjoa discussed the Easter eggs.
Not actual Easter eggs, but
that can be found in Lady Danbury's wardrobe, hinting that we get to know about her African origins, an element which has been worked into her costuming. This also kind of reminded me of the outfit we see her wearing in the This Morning link. She has this really like chunky gold necklace. So I wondered if that's maybe one reference to that. About the love stories, Golda said it's always about young love, and she referenced George and Charlotte, saying that they met when they were so young. Being speculated that the subplots will kind of mirror the main plot in a way, so maybe they will explore some Pollen similarities between the George and Queen Charlotte relationship as well.
That might come in handy when, you know, Colin's having to appeal for the love of his life not to have a head chopped off.
Adjoa also reflected upon the similarities between the love stories, adding that George and Charlotte, they didn't have the most promising of starts in terms of how they were regarded by their families in the wider world, but in coming together, they made a really strong partnership. She also stated that Penelope and Colin are both kind of overlooked, but the two of them together are strong and strengthened by each other. And through their partnership, they are able to be more of themselves. And that's not always what happens in relationships. It does with them, and I think it really does with George and Charlotte.
Like, how much did this absolutely just make you... this is it. Pollen against the world, right?
Yeah. Pollen against the world.
This is what we've been waiting for. It's what's been alluded to with things like Tom Verica, but this is it. And it's so true that I love this strengthened by each other. As a partnership, and it's always them together against everything.
Yeah, we always get new details that just make me emotional. Elsewhere, Nicola mentioned she took a vase from Penelope's room at the end of filming. Fans have speculated this could mean that Penelope's room will no longer be needed, as Pollen will have a new set and a new home in future seasons. Yes, plural, because Luke admitted that he tried to steal Colin's ring, but production took it back off of him because they needed it for future seasons. Yes, you heard that right. Multiple seasons.
Pollen in for the long haul, guys.
But now for some crumbs we are really excited about and are hot off the churro truck on the day we are recording this little insert. A user on the Pollen subreddit, Nippleflix, who has a very hilarious backstory about her username, was able to look at the existing season 3 stills that have been released and figure out the photo locations for the images. This hasn't been officially confirmed, so as ever, clown with caution, but the information they found is very compelling, as we will get into. Once again, it's all about the metadata, which lists a ton of information about each photo, including the date it was created, the time it was created, the actors in each still, and crucially, the set location.
Do you remember a day when you didn't know what metadata meant? Blissful.
This is especially exciting because we've had endless debate about the locations of some of these photos, as you know, multiple episodes also. But to kick things off, the infamous to-doom still of Moonlight Pollen, we'd wondered in the past whether this was inside Penelope's house, outside in the gardens, outside at a ball perhaps. Well, listeners, it seems the location for the still, and thus the scene, is exterior Featherington House garden. So Moonlight Pollen takes place outside Penelope's house.
Oh my word.
Yes.
Lecky.
And I will tell you why I personally find this compelling, because if you look at the metadata that the user found, it says that the picture was taken on July 19th, 2022, and we have a screenshot from Basildon Park's website, which is the exterior of the Featherington House in 208 at the Featherington Ball, and it says that they were closed during that time. They were closed for those dates for filming, specifically.
If you want to go on a Crumbs deep dive with us, we do have a series on them. So we discuss this, and we discuss the Osterley leaks, which we'll get to in a moment, in Oh Crumbs, What a Pirate. But speaking of Osterley, what have we got there?
So the metadata tells us that the Austerley ball is described as the full moon ball, which is kind of close. We were calling it the lunar ball, so we're kind of on theme there. The still of Benedict and Colin from 306 is labeled as being from the interior of Will's club. And we also just wanted to mention that the dates they filmed at Austerley, we also have a screenshot from their website from when they were closed for filming.
And lots of filming leaks.
Yes, and that completely matches the picture of Elle and the one from Queen Charlotte that we just got, as well as, was there one more? Oh, as well as the Pollen one where they're outside in the courtyard.
Oh, as well as the Polin one.
Yeah.
that little chestnut.
That little gem. Yeah. And very interestingly, the new still of Penelope tending to Colin's wounded hand is listed as being filmed on the 8th of August, 2022. I don't know why I'm so excited by this, but...
Yeah, this is ridiculous. It's like we can confirm the filming took place.
But what else happened on the 8th of August, 2022? Nick posted the Love Island water bottle photo to Instagram. If you haven't seen it, we will share it. But you can see the floorboards of the room in the photo, and they do seem to match. Also, you can just about see the pale green and blue wall paneling in the back of Nicola's photo, which again matches those seen in the hand-holding still. I don't know why I'm so excited about this one.
Again, filming has been confirmed as being filmed 2 years ago. Well done, everyone.
In another comparison, the Pepling still is listed as being from the 23rd of September in 2022. Once again, Nick left us a little crumb on that exact date, and it perfectly matches. You might remember this photo. We've discussed it before. It's a photo of two boom mics with tiny pollen stickers on them standing in front of a yellow paneled wall with a painting of a gray horse. Fans, including ourselves, previously suspected that this could have been from Colin's room. We did wonder when we saw the Pebling still for the first time if it could have been the same room. I think we wanted to cling onto the hope of it being Colin's bedroom, but we now know that was taken the same day that the Pebling still was taken, and it really does look like this was taken on the set of the Stowell House. So the metadata tells us that this picture was taken in the drawing room of the Stowell House. The Stowells are a new family for season 3, with Lady Stowell being played by Sophie Woolley. We believe she also has a daughter, Miss Stowell, who will be played by Kitty Debling. We mentioned her in our first Crumbs episode, I believe, What a Pirate. We believe we spotted her back at Austerley. And Sophie Woolley was also spotted by Obbs at the Pollen wedding, so we can infer that the family may pop up throughout the entire season.
It's a little soiree, perhaps.
As for the Featherington still, that location is listed as being from the Livingston Home Garden Party. If that name sounds familiar to you, it's because we know the actress Genevieve Chenor, previously known as Genevieve Florence, will be playing Miss Clara Livingston. She was also photographed at the Pollen wedding, and this still is from 301, again suggesting she's one of the new townspeople who will be featured on and off again this season.
So another scene confirmed.
Yes. There are a couple of conflicting details with the episode numbers on the metadata, which we believe to be typos, but overall the locations and dates seem to match up really well, so we do think the locations are right. The photographs also feature the name Hampstead, which was the code name for the production of Bridgerton, so I personally suspect they were submitted to TV Insider from production directly, though of course we could be wrong. To me, though, it all seems very convincing.
A little Christmas throwback. TV Insider was the publication that accidentally released the Christmas photos too early.
Yes.
And it seems like these are just like a press source that are getting like the raw images, so they haven't been processed, they haven't had the data removed.
Yes.
So yeah, I think it all does seem to align. There's a couple of conflicting episode numbers, but things like the production title, the times, the dates, the stars are aligning.
And the names of minor characters who have not yet been officially announced by the production.
Like Livingston, the Stowells.
Yeah, the characters have not even been mentioned yet by production. So the fact that some random website would know of these characters when they haven't been digging for crumbs like rabid fans, I just find it compelling.
So what does this mean, Leck?
Obviously, we now know a few of the events that will be taking place in early season 3 and who will be hosting. But most interestingly, we likely know the locations of the Moonlight Pollen and hand-holding scene.
We've been up and down since last June trying to figure out this Moonlight Pollen scene.
Yes.
How do you feel about it being the Featherington Gardens?
I think we speculated that it might be in our topiary episode.
I'm losing track, to be honest. We haven't slept very much in a long time.
And I believe in this episode we mentioned also that the focus on the moon in episode 2 is really interesting. It's exciting that Colin goes to see her in like a private location, and it happens to be the place where he said he would never court her. And obviously it looks like he has very different feelings this time around.
That exact same location, I think that decision to have it there makes so much sense because she looks so distressed.
Yeah.
And for her, it's like it reinforces it, her being in that space. And it's like a return to their conflict from last season.
And also just the symbolism of the moonlight. I feel like it's just kind of like illuminating their real feelings in this scene. And for Colin, he's learning something. And the moon is shedding light on their situation and their feelings for each other. And I feel like this is the moment where we'll have that first kiss where they act on these feelings.
Well, speaking of, Becky, we'll get back to the moonlight scene in just a minute, but there's one more still that we need to be discussing that we were discussing on the pod and that me and you've been discussing all week trying to figure out. And it is the hand-holding scene. We've been trying to figure out where that room is. What did we think, and how does this change it now that we have the metadata?
We previously suspected that it was Colin's bedroom because it looks exactly like the I always say that. I just imagine him at the Featherington house. He's not a Featherington yet. He's
not yet.
Not Mr. Featherington. But we thought that it was the Bridgerton drawing room and it was readdressed into Colin's bedroom because Colin's bedroom and the Bridgerton drawing room are one and the same. They just kind of change it up for those scenes in the past. And the wall paneling matches. However, the metadata tells us that this is the Bridgerton study or games room. I'm not too disappointed that it's not Colin's bedroom. I can see why we felt that. There's even like a very like masculine chair in the background, a masculine leather chair. But that kind of also supports the idea that it might be a study, which is kind of a place where you might find a journal, perhaps.
Perhaps.
I should mention, I'm positive this is still the Bridgerton drawing room that they've redressed for this scene. In future episodes, they're not going to need Penelope or Colin's bedroom anymore. So in future seasons, we may see the drawing room double as this study or games room. But I believe that this is a new set. They redressed the Bridgerton drawing room for this study, this games room, specifically for this scene. But you had some opinions on the games room idea, I believe.
Oh my god, I like the idea of it being the games room because that definitely ties back to the psyche of like childhood. It reminds me of like the nursery scene.
Yeah.
And that kind of reversion to childhood. And obviously with their story being as it is about childhood friends, I like the idea that this moment where his like brain goes zoop, is in like, I don't know, it could be like a more like
billiards
room
or something. Yeah.
But I still like that like playful edge to it. Okay, Lakey. In the episode, we pieced together a bit of a timeline, but and I think one of the things that like a lot of people have been really struck by is obviously we have the clip that we had where they're left in such a bad place. Yeah. A disastrous place, like she calls him cruel. And then in the other clip that we have from 302, it's such a different tone where she calls him kind and she's looking up and gazing. How do you think we're going to get from that point to that point? Lucky, what do you think happens at that ball, puts her in that mindset, and how on earth we move past that?
So we touch on this in the episode, but I believe that altercation is about halfway through episode 1. And by the end of the episode, there will be perhaps another ball where they run into each other. Maybe Colin actually sees Penelope failing spectacularly again, but this time he has the context and he feels guilty and he's driven to help her. And I feel like maybe at that point she'll be willing to accept his help. But the idea, what I really want, because I don't think we'll see them dancing until 303. I don't think they'll be dancing in episode 2. I think that they're going to have a dance at the end of episode 1, which is going to help heal and
let go of the conflict a bit.
Yes. I feel like they're going to have a healing dance. I had this idea that maybe Colin would be motivated to help her if he sees her kind of on the sidelines of a ball again and realizes now that isn't what she wants, that she wants to find a husband. And that's why he asks her to dance. And she maybe has no choice but to agree, really. And during the dance, he takes her by surprise by offering to help her with her plan or something like that.
Yeah, and being genuine. Because I think there is another part of the conflict, not the conflict, but I think there is another part of that discussion to happen because she left and he didn't have a chance to respond. And she also didn't explain really what she wanted from the season, unless that is announced and ridiculed at the ball.
So the episode will close on kind of this...
the formation of the plan.
Happier note. The formation of the plan. They're again friends, because I don't think Penelope is going to hold on to that grudge. Well, she obviously doesn't, because she's completely fine being with him in the beginning of episode 2. So I feel like they're going to have a healing dance at the end of episode 1 after he offers to help her with her plan.
I love that idea, because what you have is, I think what happens at that first Danbury ball is that she has a disastrous night. She's already in a bad place. Like maybe Cressida said something terrible to her.
Yeah.
He's there, which is the last thing she wants. And he doesn't have the context of how upset she is. And I think after that scene when she walks away, I think that's going to hit him. And he's going to not drop that swaggery edge, because that's what he has. But I think he is going to sit and realise and be like, shit, I need to genuinely make amends. And I think the way that they make amends is, like you say, through a very genuine moment of connection where he drops that a little bit. and tries to actually speak to her, and like you say, sees her and genuinely wants to help. Maybe because he feels guilty that he's made her even more of a laughing stock, but maybe just because he's a friend and just wants to fix it any way he can.
Yeah, I don't think we touched on this in the episode, but I also like the idea of there being a confrontation between Cressida and Penelope in episode 1, in that last ball, or towards the end of the episode before Penelope and Colin hatch that plan, because I feel like there'll be a really great moment where they could mirror that later in the season, where Penelope finally stands up to Cressida as their rivalry kind of takes off.
And that could be, setting the seeds for what's going to develop across the whole season as ultimately beginning as this rival we've seen since 101. Developing into maybe a blackmail plot, perhaps.
And then just as a final little really silly crumb, but this Brazilian nail polish brand has released a collaboration with Bridgerton. It's actually really cute, and a lot of the colors are Pen and Lady Whistledown themed. But one of the colors refers to Penelope as the emerald and says that's her color of the season, kind of reinforcing the idea that Penelope will be the emerald of the season.
So don't worry, Pen, it's not all bad for all time. It'll turn out right in the end. And speaking of the end, should we go grab the others and finish up this episode? Off back in time we go, like, I'll see you later. We've gone through a lot, and this thing, we probably missed loads out, and we will sweep up more along as we go. You know, there's been a lot to think about. It's been a very, very busy week. But just before I let you go, just a question. Not to say we're ungrateful for all of this, we're going to be eating this feast for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. But what's the next thing? Is there something that you kind of want to see? Are you like, oh, this has really put me in the mood to get this still, or I really want to see this scene, or I really want this piece of information next?
I want the trailer.
Please, the trailer.
As much chaos as it would bring us, I was opening up my editing program last night, and I was looking at some unfinished edits I had, and I was like, I don't know how much I can do with these 2 new clips, but if I had the trailer, I could maybe do something. And I miss editing Pollen.
Quite frankly, I don't think we're going to get anything beyond what we have for a while now. I think the next thing we will be getting is the trailer.
Yeah. Or I'd like the soundtrack. I would love that.
Yeah.
The soundtrack.
That would be just enough to spiral over, but not too much that it will spoil surprises in the show.
Yeah.
In another recent interview after this event, Nick and Luke said from this point out, the Pollen fans can expect to receive bits of something here and there.
The constant drip, 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 drip.
Yeah. So we'll see how that goes.
And I'm just going to say, for our sanity, we're not going to make a podcast for every tiny drop there is. For my sanity specifically, I think it'll be more of if we get something, we're going to scoop it up.
We will cover things when we can.
We have our weekly crumbs, our tiny little mini episodes where we can scoop things up.
Yeah.
Also, I just want to thank everyone who has sort of messaged us in the last week, or even if you haven't messaged us and you've just been clowning on your own, it's just so exciting to see the support for Pollen and how everyone's getting excited and everyone's being inspired to sort of do edits and things like that, and just it's so nice to see. I just feel like we're all in a special little club.
Yeah, we love reading everybody's theories that they've come up with on their own, and we really appreciate everyone who's been listening.
All of you.
We've got a lot to look forward to, haven't we?
Yeah.
And as we await the bountiful coming weeks, Lecky, where can everyone find us?
You can find us at WhatABarbapod on Instagram and TikTok.
And if you're listening to us on a podcast app, we have YouTube videos with lovely, amazing collages by our beautiful beans. And if you're watching us on YouTube, we're a podcast available on all your favourite podcast platforms.
And beans, my darling beans, for a start, congratulations on your bagels. They were an absolute fucking triumph, if I can be honest with you.
They're good. I ate one.
Veg took some screenshots.
I did.
We're going to have to share those.
Also, for you guys, when you're editing, I whispered every step that I was doing.
So we'll have a recipe for you coming soon.
Yeah, a little bit.
Amazing. Hilarious.
But aside from your triumphant bagel making, can you do me the honour and sing us out, babe?
Incredible, isn't it? Das violin. Do 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 do.
A Polin podcast.